Mm. Happy Flag Day for everyone here in the United States. And happy birthday to the Army. Um, kind of wish I went to the parade today since, it was in DC. It was only an hour away, but the streets would have probably been really crowded. um, there would have been some protesters out there, but most protesters are a bunch of blue haired, septum piercing pillow biters who can't fight. So, and the ones who do try to fight will see themselves get hurt badly. Ooh, oh no, oh no, oh no. But yeah, um, so I did wear this today, but I went to an Asian festival in downtown Baltimore. I wanted to go with some food. I really didn't eat that much. I bought um, well, I got a pork bun and a chicken bun, the bao. So Hassan, go somewhere. Don't no one come to your job kicking dicks out of your mouth while you're working. So don't interrupt me here. Why don't you go somewhere before I call before I call Homeland Security on you, you fucking terrorists. get off my get off my fucking live stream. I'm American. I'm fucking army. U.S. is the best place in the world. If you don't like it, go suck a dick and go somewhere else. Because no one cares what you think over here. Over here, army, American, fuck you. I don't care for uh, you little Muhammad worshiping with his little his little 4-year-old wife he was raping. Oh, fuck y'all. I don't give a shit. So yeah, that's how we started. We start off spicy. Don't come over here with the crap. Today is the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army, established in 1775, a year before the nation was established. Because you know why? Before you had a nation, you had to have a standing army to establish that nation. So the U.S. Army is a year older than the United States. What's up, DJ Realness? Welcome to everyone coming into the stream again. Um, while we're looking at this, I mean, while we're live here, I'm actually looking at the breaking news of protesters and rioters, um, which is funny. Like I said, most of them won't fight. I saw some hard looks when I went to an Asian festival today. Just a few, not from the Asians though. It was from a bunch of libtard Americans walking around the Asian festival. They were looking at me kind of strange because I was wearing this, but so what? At the end of the day, I can fight. They can't, so they didn't say anything to me. They wanted to say something, but they couldn't. DJ Brown says God Army's brother is the strongest. Um, then I got a couple of nice looks. I saw a couple of women looking at me in a nice way. Well, black women. So shout out to the black women. I always talk a lot of shit about them, but some of them were giving me some nice looks. I didn't particularly. Well, never mind. But yeah, I got some nice looks from them. So if you are gonna rock your if you're gonna rock your military stuff, you need to be still in shape because you're gonna make us look bad if you don't. So unlike that little Master Chief in the Navy, who recently got promoted to the head of the Naval Nuclear Command, who's more and the lady is morbidly obese, so she looks completely ridiculous in her uniform. I can still cut a good swath in my uniform. So I wasn't in uniform. I was just in my little PT, my little PT t-shirt. But either people was mad at me because I had on an Arby shirt, or they were looking at me like, all right, you look all right. So Saya says, "Don't you dare talk about our prophet. You'll regret it." Man, fuck your prophet. Fuck your child raping ass prophet who had a religion that spread throughout the Middle East and Africa, enslaving everyone that they came to. Man, fuck Islam. They can go suck a shiny dick. I'm in America. You ain't get at me in Baltimore, bruh. Go ahead and try it, Saeed. Man, Saeed, these nuts in your mouth. Fuck your religion. Anyway, King Fan says, a black man victory, lapping a bunch of races. Good job, buddy. So the fuck what, bruh? I mean, I don't know what you mean by that, but I don't know if you've heard the history of America, but black men have served in every single war that America has fought. Every single one, from the French and Indian Wars till now. Matter of fact, in the in the war, in the independence, the War of Independence, a black man was the first man to die for American independence. Crispus Attucks. Look it up, bruh. Anyway, DJ Realness says, "Hey, what are you talking? Man, he's talking nonsense. He's talking nonsense, DJ." Torla says, "I've only ever been to one military parade, a Veterans Day parade, but it's forever memorable because I marched in the parade itself for JRTC. Oh, that's cool. That's what's up. So you were in JRTC at the military parade. I'm trying to remember because I went to three different high schools. Now the one in Philly definitely didn't have JRTC, but yeah, the other two definitely did. But I never thought of doing JRTC back then. Percio, you're a loser. You can't even if that's all you can come up with, bro. First of all, I'm more American than you are, so I can actually trace my roots back to the one of the founding fathers who wrote the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. As far as I'm concerned, you're the nigger, Percio, and your mother sucks dicks, and she's a legend in the streets. Moment answer says your rules say be civil, but there's nothing civil about you. No, that's for my comment section. This is the live stream. If you come in here disrespecting me, I will roast the fuck out of you. So here's the thing, Moment, and anyone else coming in here with the bullshit. I'm Generation X. If you guys don't know what Generation X is, look it the fuck up. We don't give a fuck about any of y'all motherfuckers. Generation X from 1965 to 1980, we don't give a shit. We will shit on baby boomers, we will shit on millennials, and we will shit on Gen Z, particularly Gen Z, because y'all faggots are stupid. Anyway, Andrew says, "Happy birthday to the U.S. Army from across the pond. 14 years of Royal Marine." Yeah, you've been here before, Andrew. What's going on, brother? Uh, happy birthday to the U.S. Army from across the pond. 14 years of Royal Marine. That's what's up. We train with you guys sometimes, right? Well, not I didn't, but the U.S. military. We often train with the Royal Army, the Royal Marines, Royal Navy, Royal Air Force. He said, and I had the pleasure to serve with your bravest and best. Thank you, brother. Mike Ox, it's hilarious how people flee from these countries from danger, then wave those countries' flags and sky. I know, right? I'm sorry. That is the most insane thing. If you don't, if you flee from a country to be in America and you don't want to be deported back to that country, wouldn't it make the utmost sense to wave an American flag? To be at protest saying, no, we're American, we want to stay here, and you're waving an American flag. Wouldn't that make way more sense than waving a Mexican flag or waving a Venezuelan flag or El Salvadoran flag or Haitian flag or any, like, wouldn't it make more sense? Wouldn't it behoove you to say, hey, I'm American, or I want to be American. I don't want to be in that other country. That's why I came here for better opportunities and the freedom promised to all Americans for, the pursuit of, you know, life, liberty, and happiness, right? That whole thing. life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Wouldn't it behoove you to at a protest be waving American flags and hey, I'm American, don't we don't want to go back? Wouldn't that make sense? Does it make sense to wave an American flag? I mean, sorry. Does it make sense to be waving a Mexican flag, wearing a balaclava covering your face while causing property destruction and mayhem? Does that make a lot of sense? You're like basically just at this point you're reinforcing the reasons why people want to get rid of you. That doesn't that's not good strategy. It's not. You have no sense of civility, insulting the workers' largest religion. I don't give a fuck. He came here with the bullshit, brother. He came here with the bullshit. And like I said, I'm Gen X. I will roast the shit out of you. Part of what we do when we used to crack on people, crack, Joan, insult, play the dozens, busting, snapping, whatever people called it back then, we would pinpoint anything about you and use it against you. That was the whole point of snapping jokes or roasting people. He if someone comes into my live stream with some BS when I'm trying to celebrate the 250th birthday of the army, I'm gonna fry their ass. I don't care. And by the way, I was a Muslim as a child, so I can insult the religion because I was literally Muslim as a child. So you didn't know that, did you? You make assumptions, makes an ass out of you and me. General Grunt says, "Hey, it's me reminding you to go on your smoke break. I'll cover for you." I didn't. Oh, I didn't smoke in the army. Thank goodness. Um, I didn't smoke. Well, yeah, I didn't smoke or drink. I didn't start drinking until college. Bad habit. But yeah, I didn't even drink coffee back then. I was man. I was I was a good little soldier. Zakafi says to Mike, well, the flag is being waved for the people, not the country. It's about culture. Interesting. DJ says we can see it by the fruits. Right. Mark says I'm a disabled veteran and black man saved my life and acted like it was nothing. Oh, and black men. Well, first of all, thank you for your service, Mark, and I'm glad you're here. Um, you know, salute to all my disabled vets. Um, yeah, man. When it's a brotherhood. People don't understand that. Like when I don't know if people watch enough or military movies, they will get it's not all about the hoorah rah, the we're here because we're super patriots and blah blah blah. I mean that's part of it, but if for the folks who served in combat and I have not, so I'm not with the stolen valor stuff, so I'm not gonna pretend I was in the combat when I'm not. But for the folks who served in combat, they what they usually say they is like they wasn't like at the during combat they see each other as brothers. Like all that other dumb stuff flies out the window. Like oh we're a different race, oh we're a different religion, um, oh you come from Mississippi, I come from Wisconsin. All that stuff is out the window. At the end of the day, we got each other's back. So and that's what it's about. Afsel says hello from Hebron, Israel. Sir, what's I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Sorry if I didn't. But what's up, Afsel? Please correct me if I mispronounced that. Moment says you have no lower. You don't have to lower yourself when you insult any religion, bruh. I'm sorry. Again, you are probably a millennial or Gen Z. Again, understand Gen X, we give zero Fs. I'm telling you, I'm just warning you. If you ever come across someone in their late 40s to mid 50s, they are Generation X and they really will not care about your feelings if you say something disrespectful to them. I'm just saying. So, Mike asks exactly a flag is representing the country. Exactly. Also says, can I ask you something, G? I mean, well, you literally already did, but go ahead and ask the further question. Um, People can ask me any question as long as it's family friendly and is relevant to the live stream. Zagaby says is representing the people in this situation. Yeah. DJ says insult, call it saying the truth. Yep. Plus it's not like I said, and people saying I'm insulting religion. It's not like I actually said anything false. If you parsed what I said, he literally did have a child marriage. Child marriage is very common throughout the Middle East. Child marriage is literally a common thing that happens in the Middle East and in India. Just saying, and I'm not trying to be funny, not trying to be insult. That is factual. Muhammad spoken many times in Islamic scriptures about his beloved Aisha. Again, I was a Muslim as a child. On top of that, Islam was used as a tool for invasion throughout the Middle East, North Africa, parts of Southern Europe, and parts of Central Asia. What part? So I may have said it in a in a in a biting way, but there's nothing I said that wasn't false about what I when I said it. Muhammad did go into a marriage with a child, a young child, and people can debate whether or not he actually consummated it when she was older or when she was not. Uh, history history gives us the implication that he didn't, which would have been quite common. Um, and again, the Muslim invasion of that whole region of the world again is historical fact. On top of it, that's what started the Holy Crusades, literally. DJ says we are called to expose the devil. Rusty says I'm Gen X. What's up, Rusty? Also said, can I ask something? You just asked. You just asked me. Can you ask me something twice? Literally, just go ahead and spit it out, brother. I'm guessing we're behind in the timeline. I mean, in the live stream, so I'll catch up to it. I kind of need my my moderators here. I don't see them yet. Or if they are moderators, if any moderators are in the chat, please put up my Cash App in the live stream, please. Jonathan, uh, sorry if I misspelled, if I mispronounced it. He said, "Don't you think you're a little bit mean?" Yes, I am a bit mean because I'm Gen X. Again, I'm trying to explain. Gen X, we don't care about people's feelings. I really think people should look up the cultural uh, the cultural traits of Gen X. From if by doing so, you can watch some classic '80s films, Saint Elmo's Fire, Ferris, you know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Weird Science, um, and I could go on with a litany of '80s films to kind of give you a hint at why Gen X are how they are. Tor Levis says I'm Gen Z and hate my own generation. Too lazy they are. Well, I don't give in. I don't want to give in completely the stereotypes, but I don't think I don't think Gen Z are lazy. That's one thing I won't ascribe to them. I, what I do think is that they're entitled. I think they're very entitled, and I think they've lost the skill of verbal dispute. Like nowadays, like if you disagree with them, they call it violence. If you disagree with someone, it's violence. Like that's not what the word violence means. So I won't say they're lazy. I just think they're entitled and soft. Almost as such a vulgar mouth you have, sinking so low to insult someone's mother. Mothers deserve high honor, which you have no. Dude, you are definitely not American. That comment alone shows you are not American. Because yeah, we insult mothers over here, and if you don't want your mother insulted, don't come. Look, if they started with me, brother, I'm going to end it. Again, you don't. First of all, you're not American, obviously, because we insult mothers all the time here. Two, Gen X, we literally used to insult each other for fun as a pastime back in the 80s and 90s. And three, your mother jokes were the most common of those. So, Max says, can we argue about something? Again, don't ask, can you ask me something? Just go ahead with the question. If it's family friendly and relevant to the live stream, go ahead and go ahead and type it. My guy says exactly. Onifin says, I have never seen a black racist. This is my first time. Really? First of all, I'm not racist. Where, where in, where? First of all, where in what I said was racist? That's, that's my first question. Two, since when is Muslim a race, dumbass? You're fucking stupid. You think Muslim is a race? So if I'm no longer Muslim, did I switch my race? Am I transracial now? Because I'm not Muslim anymore? Am I transracial? Because Muslim is not a race. And again, if you think historical facts are racist, you need to take your soft ass somewhere else because you're a bitch. There's nothing racist remotely in what I said. What I said was mean, but it was still factually accurate. Again, Muhammad engaged in a childhood marriage. Childhood marriage is common in the Middle East and in India, and Muslims did invade and conquer most of North Africa, the Middle East, parts of Southern Europe, and parts of Central Asia. Istanbul was once Constantinople. Istanbul was Constantinople. Michael says not all, but a lot. Moment says you are a hypocrite. You don't know the meanings of the words you are using. If I'm a hypocrite, that means I have to be contradicting myself in some way. In which way am I contradicting myself, sir? What you're saying, what you mean to say is that I'm a mean person. I am sarcastic and I am mean, and that and that is par for the course for my generation. If you don't like it, go to some other live stream, bro. Michael says thank you. Rusty says the logic of a petulant child. Max says I want to argue, but the flag thing makes complete sense. I agree. Jack Martin says keep deporting MAGA. How? That doesn't even remotely make sense, brother. How are you gonna deport MAGA if MAGA are Americans? We, if you deport MAGA, you're sending them on a free trip because they're coming back. If you deport Black Americans, you just sent them on a free trip because they're coming back. It so your whole Trump derangement syndrome doesn't work. Like, look, there are genuine criticisms you can make against the president or against uh, the government or against the military. But the whole, well, let's deport Americans because we're mad that they're deporting illegal immigrants who have criminal records is quite obtuse. Yeah. Michael says losers. Home, Homegirl says not at all sorry. I think she's referring to my looks. Again, you're not seeing the whole picture here, and I'm not going to do it. But if you want to, you can sign up for my membership and you can see all of me. Well, not all of me. I don't get down like that. That's OnlyFans stuff. I mean, you can see me with the 8 pack out. Okay. And if you're not impressed, hey, good. I'm married. I don't care. I have a I have a hot little rice bunny, and I'm good. um, Sean Ryan clip says, "For real, man, I can't stand the protest. Makes no sense. If Mexico and these places are so great, go on back." Exactly. It is so incoherent. And me being a philosophy nerd, for okay, so some of y'all don't know that either. I'm a philosophy nerd. I pride myself on logic and rationality and clear argumentation. The protests are just bad strategy. If you're going to be anti deportation, then those very people who do not want to be deported should be basically doubling down on the fact that they consider themselves American, waving American flags, saying, "Hey, I'm American. Please don't send me back. Let me follow, show me the right channels to go through so that I may stay here." Or, "Hey, I'll just self deport so that I can come back here through the proper channels." Or, "Hey, let me speak with immigration lawyer so I can get my paperwork correctly so I can stay here." These are the rational things to do. But sitting there jumping on people's cars while waving a flag, while wearing a balaclava, not a good idea. Thank you, Sean Ryan Clips. Rusty says you are hitting on cylinders. Thank you, Rusty. Michael says Gen X. Tora Lover 22 says 100% violent protests solve absolutely nothing and only create more drama. I wish we could just sit down and talk with each other, take in each other's opinions and learn from them. Exactly. Yep. Look, another thing people don't know. I was a leftist while in college. Yes, I was one of those guys who became a leftist in college. But even back then, I didn't believe in protests. I thought they were largely a waste of time because they're largely the powerless expressing their frustrations with those in power. That never works. And at best, what it does is it can start a conversation. But if you, but just, but that's not going to happen if you're protesting in bad faith by rioting and causing mayhem. So, Michael says, awesome. Thank you again, brother. DJ Riona says, we have a soul. Right. Asa says, should I call ice on you? Go ahead. Call ice on me. Again, you're going to be sending me on a free vacation because I'm foundational Black American FSO. Go ahead, call ice. You're probably, I hope you're American because if not, um, yeah, not that's not gonna work out well for you, brother. I have my DD 214. Okay, I'm an American. You, you obviously know nothing about Black American history. Do you know Black Americans have been here from the very start? Do you know Black Americans arrived here before the before they landed on Plymouth Rock? You know that we came here in 1619 to the Jamestown colony of Virginia, a full year before the Pilgrims arrived on Plymouth Rock. We have been here from the beginning. This is why we are calling ourselves now foundational Black Americans. We're not we're not the African immigrants or the Caribbean immigrants or the Afro Latino immigrants. Shout outs to all of them. I love them all, but we're not them. We are a separate lineage. We are Americans. We fought in every American war from the French and Indian War, the American War of Independence, the War of 1812, the Mexican War, the Spanish American Wars, the the Indian Wars, the Civil War, so on and so on, like all of them. We even had our own we even had our own regiment, the Buffalo Soldiers. Ask about it. They even know about the Buffalo Soldiers in the Philippines. They were sent to the Philippines during the Filipino American War, which lasted all about a few months. Matter of fact, and to keep things completely honest, some of those Buffalo Soldiers defected to the Filipino side because they found allegiance with those folks. Either way, we fought in every war. We've earned our freedom. We've earned our citizenship. And if you call ICE on me, I hope it was worth the long distance international call because you'll just be sending me on a free vacation because I do have my passport, brother. And yeah, I'll be back. Go ahead, call ice. See how that works out for you. Anafon says America is the world, not a nation. America is not the world. Your geography sucks. What you're trying to say is America refers to all of North and South America. That's not all of the world. You can say it applies to most of the countries in the mm, Western Hemisphere, maybe, but still incorrect. When people say America, usually they are referring specifically to the United States of America. Um, Again, I can, you can extrapolate that to the rest of North America and maybe even South America as well, and the Caribbean. But it's not the whole world. And when Americans talk about being Americans, they're talking about the United States. No one look even overseas when people say Americans, no one is confusing them with Mexicans or Jamaicans or Canadians or people from Greenland. Like they when they people say American, everyone knows they're referring to citizens of the United States. But try again. Stephen Kyle says ICE came and took everyone from the nail shop my wife goes to today. Really? So so in Baltimore a few days ago, a friend of mine told me they took a Vietnamese woman because a lot of the nail salons in the Baltimore region do tend to be owned by Vietnamese folks. Vietnamese folks are very industrious people, and they come here to America. They will start a business like that. So shout out to them. I have very good friends who are Vietnamese, and the girls are cute. Um, but yeah, um, they have been ramping up the deportations recently. Well, here's the good thing, Stephen. Just because they take people don't automatically mean they're going to be deported. They are going to go to some formal hearing of a sort first. Now, originally, ICE were only nabbing illegal immigrants who have criminal convictions, but then they also extended it to, so like say they were ICE agents were looking for someone who had a criminal record who's an illegal immigrant, but they're also being housed with a bunch of other folks who are illegal immigrants, and they're going to take everyone. And then sometimes that happens. So they're looking for one person, but everyone there are also illegal immigrants. So they're just going to nab everyone. Another thing I've seen them starting to do now is they will take people who do have legal residency here. They have their green cards, but they committed crimes. So if they're here on a green card and they commit crimes, they are revoking their green cards and sending them back home. So that's another thing I saw happening too. But again, I don't rejoice in anyone um, being deported unless they're criminals. Then get them the f out of here as quickly as possible because a lot of them have been terrorizing black communities. Like the liberal media literally tried to lie last year and said that a bunch of uh, Trinidad folks were not in Colorado kicking people out of their homes in an apartment complex, and they were forcing these people out of their homes uh, via gunpoint, and a lot of these were black people. So I have no sympathy for that whatsoever. And they were messing with the right ones because they came to Baltimore with that mess. It would have been some pew 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 because everyone here has a gun. DJ Brown says, "Remember, Jesus is our savior." Uh, is it Ti Clips? He said, "Please, can I please be a mod?" I don't know you yet. All of my mods are people who I've known for a while in my streams, and I've vetted. I have this. I have to see like some sort of consistency, as well as I can trust your judgments before I make someone a mod. Just DJ says he died for our sins. Excuse me, for our sins. So if we repent and live with the Holy Spirit, one offense is I don't think we'll be friends. Boo hoo. Oh no, we can't be friends, guys. I mean, pause, dude. That's not. Don't. Yeah, pause. Like, I don't need you as my friend. Like, what is this? An R&B ballad? We can be friends. Like, no, no. And deuces. Max says you didn't smoke or drink coffee. Yeah, you are straight edge. I drink a lot of coffee now, though, Max. Now, granted, I wasn't straight edge in college. I did, I did do a little bit of chiefing, but you know what? It's because if everyone's smoking weed around you, it's gonna eventually get to you. So, I smoked a little bit of weed in college, and I drank, especially when I was breaking up with girlfriends. I fell in love way too easily back in college, and I was a simp. I'm not gonna even lie. I was a simp. I was a simp. So anytime I got my little dumbass heart broken, I went to the club with my homeboy, and we would just binge drink. Especially like in the DC nightclubs. You get there before 11. The drinks are free, so you give your bartender a nice tip, and they just keep bringing you drinks. It'll be like either like a Long Island iced tea or gin and juice, because those were like the free drink. Because the free drinks were all like it was like 3 or 4 different drinks you could get for free. Like Long Island iced tea. You had to get the right bartender, because some of them would just mess it up. Because Long Island can either be really good or really bad depending on how they mix it. When it was a gin and juice, or was a vodka and cranberry. I think those are usually like the three choices. I used to get twisted. But like I said, ironically, I didn't drink in the army. Well, not true. The only time I did drink in the army was when we were in Germany. But I was like, I'm not gonna go to Germany and not try German beer. That doesn't make sense. Like beer is their water there. I was like, I gotta drink it. So I had Bitzen when I was in Germany, but throughout the rest of my service, I didn't drink. Uh, Kings fan 2017 says, "What do you think about Trump suspending ICE on farms and factory workers?" Um, I think practical. It's a practical thing. You know, there's always a there's always going to be a trade off between morality, legality, and practicality, right? And the fact that some of these farms would go that it just shows he's listening to his farmers. He knows he cares about American farmers. He knows that without the immigrant labor, a lot of these American farms would go under. That's just sort of a fact of the matter. This was also a reason why the champion of Chicano rights and of the labor force uh, was was it Cesar Chavez, I believe. He was against illegal immigrants too. So people can act like it's being racist, but it's not. To be against illegal immigration is not to be against Hispanic people, because again, the champion of Chicano rights himself was against illegal immigration, because one, he knew that it would weaken the labor force here in America, and two, he knew that those very illegal immigrants would get exploited. So um, Triple X Underscore killer number one says, "What's up?" Onifa says, "Show us your hands." Huh? These hands, bro? What are you talking about? Show us your hands. Or are you talking about the married hand? Yes, I'm married, bro. I don't know what you're saying, but show you your hands. Cartoon, what's up, brother? He said, "Peace, just a contrarian." And chat room. Martellus says, "I offer citizenship for one, maybe two Mexican women in exchange for cooking, cleaning, and a minimum of 7 offspring." Right. There needs to be an exception for thick Latinas. Okay. Rosemary, Maricela, Maria, they can stay. Eights and above can stay. We need to we need to appeal to Trump. All eights and above can stay. to make that exception, all eights and above can stay. Turn on my desktop here. Sorry, guys. Um, Robert Perez says, "Yo, what's up?" Unoffense says, "I don't think what you're saying is the truth." Well, here's the way uh, rational argumentation works, Unoffense. If you disagree with something, it behooves you, since you disbelieve what I'm saying or are dubious of it, to point that out and say why it's wrong. So in most philosophy classes, for our exams, whether midterm or final, whatever, usually on a particular, whatever particular philosophy subject it happens to be, on these exams, they will say, so and so says X, Y, and Z. Do you agree with that? Yes or no? And if so, why? Defend defend your claims and show your reasons. That's how our exams used to go in philosophy. So similarly, if you disagree with something I said, defend your reasons why you think I'm wrong. Just to say someone is wrong is not it's not a refutation of those very claims. You're just asserting that you disagree. You have to also give reasons why you disagree. Okay. Martello says, Mary Quake and Trey." You're gonna make me think of a Run DMC song. Mary, let me say, Mary, Mary, why you bugging? Mary, 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 so quite contrary. Let me say. Unofin says, "My sister would beat you in arm wrestling." Really? You haven't seen very many of my content, have you? I mean, aside from the fact that I am a veteran and I'm still quite in shape, I mean, I literally run 7 miles every day. Ask anyone who's been in my live streams. Aside from that, I literally been doing martial arts since I was 7. I am a nakmoid. That means a Thai boxer. I do JKD kickboxing, among other martial arts. Actually, if you want to pay for membership, you'll actually see a video of me showing people how to do Muay Thai at home. The only thing your sister can beat is my meat. Martellus says, "Go Army." Thank you, brother. 250th birthday. He says she is Polish. Yeah, so she's Polish, so I'm guessing she's good at eating Polish sausage too. uh, Martellus says, "Happy birthday, Army." Let's go. Look, people don't understand. That is such a historic point. We've reached 250 years. I mean, let's be honest. Not a lot of nations last 250 years. I mean, how many countries in the continent of Africa, in parts of Asia and Latin America did not make it that long? Even countries in Europe. 250 years is that's pretty hua. Um, and again, our country was established in 1776, which means the army is a full year older than the United States of America because, in our Articles of Confederation, they created a army, a continental army, to defend our rights to have an independent nation apart from Great Britain. James Mullen says, were Mexicans from Spain in this country in the late 1490s in this country before we as Spanish speaking blacks came to colonize Florida in the 1530s? Wait, I'm confused, James. You saying you're asking were the Mexicans from Spain in this country in the late 1490s in this country before we as Spanish speaking blacks came to colonize Florida in the 1530s? I'm confused what you're asking. So obviously, the um, the British weren't the first explorers, right? So we know we know the very first people are the indigenous Native Americans, right? Of obviously, which came, who came like what about say about 100,000 years ago now, or whenever it was during I believe the last ice age, where the Bering Strait was a complete land bridge um, between Russia and Alaska, right? So they were the very first, and they settled the land. But as far as the explorers that came after that, we know there were the Vikings, right? And also we know that there were some Pacific Islanders who probably made it as far as to the coast of South America. As far as Spaniards, so they made it here um, as conquistadors in the 1500s. Of course, starting with Christopher Columbus, and then from there, exploring parts of um, the Caribbean, uh, South America, and parts of the southern United States. Um, and of course, this was before the United States was established. Interesting fact: there were Filipinos who came here at that time too, because a lot of them were with the conquistadors, because the Philippines was actually uh, colonized longer than uh, than Latin America. So a lot of them came here as conquistadors um, with the Spaniards. Not only that, there were Aztecs that were brought over to the Philippines. Chase says 61 is crazy, bro. Is that accurate? 61? What, what do you mean? Six, 61 my age, or 60? Because I'm not 61. uh, um, but I'm not sure what you're referring to, 61. I don't know if I'm still talking about his sister. I mean, if you want me to smash his sister, just say so, but I'm happily married, brother. So, uh, I Hove says, "Hey, I'm new. Can I ask a question after this guy asks his question?" So, for everyone in the chat room, and you're wondering, can you ask me a question? Again, first of all, you've already asked a question. If you're asking, can you answer a question? Not to sound like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, but if you say, "Can I ask you a question?" you're literally already asking a question. But aside from that, yes, you can answer a question. I mean, ask a question as long as it's family friendly and is relevant to this live stream. Go ahead. I invite any question that is pertinent to this live stream and family friendly. Family friendly. Onifin says, but she is strong as a bear. Okay. Maybe a bear cub. uh, Martel says, I offer citizenship for one. Maybe. Oh, he's saying that again. We get it. You want the Latinas, man. We all want the Latinas. Like I said, eights and above there need to be an exception for all eights and above. And even if they aren't an eight, even if they're just an adjustable six, if they are an adjustable six and they are friendly, beautiful, and inspirational, they should stay. That's what I'm saying. And if they're thick Latinas, automatically. Jonathan says, so you understood what I said. I'm not. Yeah. James says, did not Mexicans from Spain colonize Texas, New Mexico, and California before we as blacks came to? What do you mean we as blacks? Blacks did not colonize Florida. That's what I don't understand. The line of questioning is this seems to be a bit of I don't want to say this is a disingenuous question, but it seems to be this question seems to be leading somewhere, and I don't get it. Like if and I'm not trying to be funny, but if you're trying to make a point, just make that point because it seemed like you're asking a leading question, where just ask, just go to wherever the question is leading and start off with that because um, I can't answer that question in good faith if it's starting off with a false, if it's starting off with a false premise embedded within it, because blacks didn't colonize anything in America. We definitely didn't colonize Florida. Who the the explorer slash conquistador and invader who colonized Florida would be Hernandez Soto. Not black. There weren't black. There weren't any black people in Florida at that time, man. Most of the black people, whether free blacks or slaves, were living were living in the antebellum South or in the northern states or some of the newer territories. Black people didn't colonize any state, much less Florida. If so, Florida would be better off. He's not. uh, he's saying we brought our white slaves over here in Virginia in 1619. Yes and no. Again, no. I don't know if you're a troll or you just don't understand history. The black people who came to the Jamestown colony in Virginia in 1619 were largely indentured servants and some were slaves, but most were indentured servants. So many of them formed uh, the groups of free blacks later on uh, in early America. But either way, blacks weren't did not come here with white slaves. You're either trolling or you just are historically illiterate because that's not true. And again, you're asking a leading question. I don't fall for leading questions, which is why I'm saying all of this to let you know if you have a point to make, just make that point instead of trying to ask disingenuous or leading questions. Okay. Torlo says, yeah, I agree with that. Actually, Gen Z is incredibly sensitive over things that they don't need to be. Right. You'd be like, I don't like avocado. You don't like avocado? How dare you, sir? That is violence to me. There's violence of his style. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but yeah, they are soft. I'm sorry. Uh, Jocelyn says Gen Z has to deal with this shitty economy left to us. Yeah, but that's a different. That is a whole different topic, right? My point is that uh, people, the the generations that came after Gen X are a bit entitled and soft. That's my point. Tora says, "What do you think Gen Alpha would be like?" I don't know because it's too early still to tell. Gen Alpha start is everyone born from 2013 till to the present. We don't really. I don't. Since the oldest Gen Alpha is like 12 now, right? We don't really know. We don't really know what they're going to be like until they hit their young adult years. Like for Gen X, they didn't know what to call. The Gen X term didn't even come out until like the late 90s. Like they didn't know what to call us. They used to call us the lost generation or the the they had different terms for us. Just like the millennials used to be called Generation Y because they didn't have a term for them at the time, and they didn't really separate them from Generation X. So right now, Gen Alpha is too young to know how they're going to differentiate from Gen Z if they do at all. Excuse me. Um, she says, "I'm worried they're going to be very detached from society with the growth of technology and the kind of education they're getting now. I don't know though." Well, I mean, that's the exact same fears people had of Gen Z and of millennials. Here's the thing with technology: people technol people will always adapt to newer technology. This is a fear that goes all the way back to ancient times, and I'm serious. Like literally, Socrates was against writing, and I'm not joking. Socrates was against writing because he thought that it would ruin people's memories if they could just write everything down and not have to remember things from from instant memory recall. So he was against writing, which is why none of his philosophy was written down by he himself. It was written down by other people like Plato and other contemporaries of Socrates who were his students, or people who were either his students or people who were his rivals wrote down wrote down what we know of Socrates today, because he was against it because he literally thought that the very one of the very first uh, forms of communication technology we had, which was writing, would ruin people's memories and and you know basically hurt their ability to learn. And you could go down later down the line. People said the same thing about television, right? People had the same fears about television, um, the radio, the computer. Once when they first started making personal computers, they thought that as well. Um, the internet, of course, like in the '90s, they thought the World Wide Web and the internet was going to ruin us. So, but we've evolved. Nowadays, the internet is considered a necessity, right? Um, so I think Gen Alpha, they will, like Gen Z, like millennials, like Gen X, they will adapt to the new technology and use it for them instead of it being used against them. Or maybe I'm being optimistic, but looking at the trend of technology, that looks the way it's going, right? Wandering Englishman says F Islam, F Allah. Omar says I have to move at last movement. Somebody stole my expensive guitar. I have to move. But I'm not cleaning the room. Oh, I'm sorry to hear someone stole your guitar. Um, as someone who's lost things or had them stolen that were precious to me, I can understand just how bad that is, especially if it's something that can be a means of making money. Like I don't know if you're like a musician that you make money through your guitar, or if it's just a prized possession of yours. But that sucks. Rudy the boxer says Jesus is king. Vilakata Vuki says save the future. I hope I said that name right. I was trying to say it correctly. Zax YT says, "Who's your favorite rapper?" Oh, here we go. But Biggie is still my favorite rapper, and always will be. Um, Again, welcome to everyone coming into the chat. Got a few people on some P Diddy stuff in here, talking about they want to see stuff. Go. Anyone saying crazy stuff like that, you need to go to OnlyFans. This is not only. I don't get down like that. Y'all can go subscribe to anyone coming in here on that freaky deaky can hey, go to OnlyFans, buy you some Diddy oil, go to town, have fun. But that will not be happening over here because we can't stop, won't stop. On offenses and who stopped him. Uh, do us a favor, guys, and if you're referring to something or someone previously in the chat room, can you reference specifically the person? Don't use a pronoun because that way we we can know who you're talking about. Because you just saying him, we don't know who him is. Carmen says, "I wish someone can block these say." I don't know what that said hi thing is, Carson. That it. I'm glad I'm not the only one weirded out by it. By the way, because I really don't know what the whole said hi thing is. It's like what happened to just literally just saying hi. And I'm guessing there's some sort of button in the chat room that people can press for that to happen. But it is weird to me. I'm glad I'm not the only one though. That's why I normally haven't spoken on it because I thought that that was just an option for anyone in the chat room to press. But if it's weirding other people out, then I know it's not just me. Max says I've determined we are both contrarians, and I can't argue with you because we agree so far on everything. But good stream, bro. Stay blessed. Thank you, Max. The thing is, I don't mind people disagreeing with me because that's cool. Like if someone disagrees with me and can show me where I'm wrong, then I've learned something as a result. And if that happens, I have to thank you for it. What I don't like is if someone disagrees with me and then they try to throw an insult and then they try to play victim when I roast them afterwards. That's what I don't like. It's like, all right, you can disagree with me, that's cool. But if they try to like throw an insult bomb, right, just to see if it lands, and then I notice it and then I respond and roast them, then they want to play victim. And like it's like we don't have to agree on everything. Like I was literally saying this to my friend earlier. Like I have never unfriended someone on social media because I disagree with their beliefs, and I disagree vehemently with a lot of my friends' ideas and beliefs. And I might tell them so sometimes, but I would never unfriend them. I I don't mind, a plurality of ideas. I I, I like I like diversity, but I like more a diversity of thought than diversity of just ethnicity. Just because there's ethnic diversity doesn't mean there's going to be a diversity of thought and ideas, which is what I'm I find more rewarding. And speaking of which, I want let me show you guys something real quick. Okay, what do you say about that? This is the parade from earlier. They're showing every era of the U.S. Army. I believe those troops are representing World War I troops. I just thought that would be cool. Lively Cuts says, "You don't think this is getting closer to us losing parts of our First Amendment rights to assemble?" Wait, what? No, there's no one saying you don't have the right to free assembly. You don't have the right to cause property damage. You don't have the rights to block highways. So, what if, you have an elderly family member and they need to get to the hospital immediately and someone's blocking the goddamn highway because they want to wave a Mexican flag and say, F Trump, F MAGA, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, your significant other needs to get to the hospital. You don't see a problem with that? Or you worked hard all your life to get the things that you got, and you just see people breaking and destroying it to prove a point. You don't think there's something wrong with that? That's not the that is property damage, causing I forgot the term for it. Someone can probably fact check that for me. But property damage and a causing civil unrest. These things are not constitutionally protected, and they never have been. Yes, you have the right to free assembly. Free assembly does not include destroying other people's property, causing civil unrest, attacking people. Like, some of you always talk about First Amendment rights, and most of you have not read the Bill of Rights. Most of you never even take had to take a civics test because, again, the right to free assembly does not establish that you can destroy other people's property, assault people, obstruct vehicles, and so forth. In Florida, they've already established that motorists have the right to run you over if you try to stop them on the road for the purposes of attacking them or destroying their cars. Because that sort of stuff is not protected by the First Amendment. If you got look, if you're going to arm yourself with the First Amendment, you first need to know what the First Amendment states. Uh, His divine shall says you right. Thank you. Taurus as well. I'd say if it's a genuine peaceful protest and they're just trying to express themselves, then that falls well under the First Amendment. If it gets violent in any way, then that needs to stop. Exactly. Violence is not protected under the First Amendment. So again, people need to. It shows where people didn't have to take a civics exam in high school because we did at my school. The state of Maryland used to require a functional civics exam, a functional mathematics exam, and a functional literacy exam as prerequisites for graduation. A lot of schools don't have that anymore, and it shows in people being quite historically illiterate. Esther Chavez is Trump. What's up, Esther? Tor says, men, if someone calls ICE on you, I bet the ICE agent is just going to say, this gentleman is more American than I am. What's the issue? Exactly. Like I said, Tor, you saw the guy asking me, what would I do about if you called ICE on me? I was like, man, go right on ahead. I was like, really? Go right on ahead. Call ICE. Send me on a free vacation because I have my passport. And even if I didn't have my passport, I'm still coming back because I'm American. I was like, yeah. And on top of it, again, they just don't know the history of Black Americans. A lot of what another thing that immigrants are mad at Black people about is that for years they have practiced anti-Black racism because they thought it made them more adjacent to being white, and now they see themselves getting deported, and they realize something that most most Americans have known for a long time, which is, and so for a lot of you, you don't know this, don't understand this. I'm dropping a gem on you right now. For those of you who don't understand, yes, there's a lot of racism between whites and blacks in America, but at the end of the day, there is a unwritten social contract between black and white America that we are the true Americans. And I don't think a lot of immigrants understand that. Some of them come from all over the globe and will tout their success and say, yeah, more successful than black people because they're just lazy and stupid. They need to work harder and all these sort of things. Mind you, that's not even Pat. mind you, that's patently false because there there are about 1,500 black millionaires in America. About 1,500 black millionaires in America, and the numbers might be more than that. But we have more black millionaires in America than anywhere in the world. I wish I was one of them. Maybe soon. But in any case, uh, calling ice on a black American will be a pointless. That would be a pointless endeavor because we're not going anywhere. We are American, and just like Torres says, the gentleman will say he's more American than I am. What's the issue? Exactly. Exactly. I can literally point to my ancestry going back to Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States and the writer of the Declaration of Independence of 1776, which declared our independence from Great Britain. My family still lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, right next to the Monticello plantation, the Jefferson land, the Monticello plantation. They still live, they still literally live right there in Charlottesville, Virginia. They actually teased me last time I went down there because they're all fat, right? And they was like, "Yeah, we don't know if you're one of us." At first, first I felt insulted because I thought they were just saying that because I was brown skinned and they're all light skinned, right? But no, they were saying it because I was fit and all of them were fat, and I started eating, and they kept seeing I kept eating, I wouldn't stop. They was like, "Okay, yeah, you might be related to us," because I may be physically fit, but I'm a fat boy at heart, so. Carden says some would say we even here before 1619. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, so I've heard the historical claims of us being here prior to 1619. Like some people claim that there were Africans that came to modern day Latin America, and there and that the images of some of the Native Americans in South America depict black people. I don't think that's actually true. Like for instance, the Olmecs. It's an interesting claim, but I don't really think there's evidence to support that black Africans prior to 1619 arrived here in mass. Now, were there black people here prior to 1619? Actually, yes, because were some of them were slaves to the conquistadors who came here. So yeah, I mean, we know of one guy specifically, Stephen Estevanico, right? He was formerly a slave who became a conquistador in his own rights. And you guys can look that up. I think I say his name Estevanico. Um, but yeah. So there were black people here prior to 1619, but those who came here prior to 1619, Carlton, were usually sailors or slaves that arrived with the Spanish conquistadors. So so that part is true. We did arrive here earlier than 1619, but I was talking about specifically with uh, colonial the colonial United States. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights says happy Saturday. Hey everyone. What's up, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights? Max says Buffalo Soldier Bob Marley. Yeah, classic song. I still have my Bob Marley CDs somewhere around here. Oh, in my storage box right next to me. I have my Legends of Bob Marley CD, which is like a best of. It definitely has Buffalo Soldier on it. Buffalo Soldier here in America. It, I'm not gonna sing that. I'm not gonna butcher Bob for you guys. um, again, this is, some of these people. I don't know why people posting Diddy stuff, man. I mean, look, you guys got you guys got the Corn Hub, you got X videos, and you got X Hamster, and you got OnlyFans. Have at it. Gary says hello. What's up, Gary? Pleasant Gifts is fighting for survival. Oniva says I'm illegal in the USA. Uh, if you're illegal in the USA, well, have fun. That's all I can say. Now, if I was a root, now, despite people calling me mean and rude, I would never say I will call ICE on you. I was actually having this conversation earlier with a friend when I went to the Asian festival, and I was like, even though some of these Latinos have been acting up, I would never threaten them with saying I'm gonna call ICE on them because for centuries, you know, some Americans had weaponized law enforcement against black people for any minor inconvenience. Anything they did, I'm calling the I'm calling the police. So I would never turn around and do the very thing that black people hated done to them. I'm the bigger person. I would never do that to anyone. Plus, I mean, I've had friends who were illegal immigrants. I've dated one or two. And no, that's not my wife. But no, you know, some of my friends were illegal immigrants. Some of them I've dated. I mean, so you know, you're in a safe space here, but I cannot guarantee that anyone else in the chat room feels the same way as I do. So sometimes it's better to keep those things to yourself. Uh, Torres says Jesse Brown, I believe his name was, the first black Navy pilot deployed on an aircraft carrier back in the Korean War, if I'm not mistaken, a true hero, and there's a whole movie and book about him. Oh, that's what's up. Um, my grandfather served in the Korean War as an infantryman. Actually, people who watched my content for a while would have seen back last year when I actually showed a a, a placard of him on my wall at my grandmother's house, showing his his commemoration for combat service during the Korean War. And you know when he came back here, he became a firefighter, so he was always a hero. He was a Korean War hero who served in combat, and he came to Baltimore and became a firefighter. And basically everyone in my family has served or have either served or have been first responders. My father also served in the army as a combat medic during the Vietnam War. He didn't go to Vietnam though. Actually, after his 4 years in the service, I think he was gonna, I don't know, either re-enlist or whatever. But he said they were gonna send him, they were gonna deploy him to Vietnam. He's like, nope, I'm I'm ending my term of service here, and that's what he did. That's why he didn't want me to be a combat medic, which I kind of wish I did though, to be honest. But yeah, Onifin says I'm in Florida. I don't know why you speak in German. Pleasant Gift says some form of hearing. So how come an American was sent to El Salvador notorious prison? I'll explain that to you why, because I've explained this in previous videos. First of all, he wasn't American. He was an El Salvadoran national who was living in America, who had been previously sent to not once, but two immigration hearings. And the immigration judge found that he could be deported, just not back to El Salvador, because he had enemies there that wanted to unalive him and his family. Do you know why he had enemies in El Salvador? because he's an MS-13. He literally had MS-13 symbols tattooed on his hand. Now the whole thing where the the uh the the photo image was edited to show MS-13, that wasn't on his hand, but the symbols were. He was found with other people who were members of the MS-13 gang and was identified by a confidential informant to the feds, who identified not only what he was wearing was MS-13 stuff, the tattoos, and even said of what set of MS-13 he was from. On top of that, he was previously pulled over, which is why he actually was brought back to America a week ago, because now he has to face charges for human smuggling and for smuggling, yeah, for human smuggling, trafficking. So he's actually back here in America to face those charges. He was federally indicted on two felony charges of human trafficking. Two. So he's back here in America, and he's gonna face that indictment. And he's probably not gonna go back to El Salvador, but he's still getting deported after he faces trial because he's here illegally. He's committed crimes, and he's part of a international gang that has been identified as terrorists by the U.S. government. So much so that with the cartels in Mexico, we have sent Army Special Forces down there to combat them. I don't know what y'all know about Army Special Forces, aka the Green Berets, but yeah, they will get the task done. And trust me, if Green Berets are going there down there, they're not the only ones. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to punch above my pay grade here. Um, but yes, Kilmar Abrego Garcia was not an American. They keep calling him a Maryland man, but he's not a Maryland man. He wasn't born in Maryland. He wasn't raised in Maryland. And he's been in other parts of the US, not just Maryland. He is an illegal immigrant from El Salvador who's a member of MS-13 as identified by a confidential informant. He has gone before two immigration hearings prior to being deported. Two immigration hearings. The, the immigration judge said that he can be deported, just not back to El Salvador, because he has rivals that will end his life and the life of his family, because they are a rival gang to MS-13. MS-13 is not the only gang out of El Salvador. They're just the most well known. Anafin says, I don't like what always happens to you, but the truth is society is divided. Well, yeah, truth. Yeah, well, that we can agree on. Society is divided. He says, what is worse, being right or dividing society? I think that's a false dilemma. Saying what is worse, being right or dividing society. That's I don't entertain such black or white thinking. Like two things can be two things can hold mutually true, right? We can acknowledge something factual while acknowledging that the facts of that matter may have unintended consequences, but but putting our head in in the ground to hide from reality doesn't make the problem go away. uh Tor says, I'm curious, does the crime affect it at all? Like, if you are convicted of something very small, like running a red light and having a green card, does ICE search for you because of that? Mm, no, well, no, because I track. Well, I mean, not to be pedantic here, but I think we need to be like, I mean, like, typically typically traffic violations aren't a criminal proceeding. That's why there's a different. That's why you have traffic court, then you have crime, then you have criminal court, and then you have civil court, because those are different areas of the law. Um, just because something is a violation of the law doesn't mean it's a criminal violation, right? So, like, say for instance, like I said, the person a few weeks ago that had his green card revoked, he had two criminal convictions in on his record. So they weren't something minor like a civil violation or a traffic violation. These were criminal violations, and it was not one but two. And they said, well, yeah, that was when he was younger and he became an upstanding uh, person since then. So we didn't think this was going to come back to bite him in the butt. But it's like, when you're a green card is a permanent residency status, which means you're basically here. You you're not guaranteed to be here. You're here at you're basically here as a guest. A, a permanent resident status, you're basically here as a glorified guest of the country until you gain citizenship. A green card doesn't doesn't ensure that you can't be sent packing back home. So I think that's the issue. But like I said, it wouldn't be like a traffic violation though, Tori. It would be like an actual criminal violation. Now, if you're talking about, can it be a misdemeanor or a felony, then that's a better question. That I don't know. Can it be like, oh, like, could something like, you once shoplifted or something like that. I don't know. Like, someone stole a Snickers, and then 10 years later, uh, sir, Mr. Jeffrey, I'm sorry, sir. We're gonna have to take you back. We're sending you back to Barbados. We remember in 2013, you stole that Snickers out of Wawa, and broke the law. No more green card. Like, I don't, I don't think they're that petty. I really, I can't say. I really don't think they're that petty. I think it would probably be like, you know, I mean, some sort of predicate felon, right? Or some higher level misdemeanor, right? Or maybe not a misdemeanor, but maybe a series of misdemeanors. Like they were all misdemeanors, but you've committed a volley of them, right? So that would make sense. Like, you never, like, you're not a felon, but you've committed a bunch of misdemeanors. That would probably get you revoked. But I don't think, at least I hope not, that they would be that petty. Be like, well, Mr. Jeffrey, you stole that Snickers from Wawa back in 2013, so you got to go. I don't know. Jocelyn says the Colorado situation was fact checked by the police chief himself. Exactly. It actually happened. I mean, we have CCTV footage of it. Like, the liberal media saying it didn't happen when we literally have closed caption TV footage of it is just ridiculous. Like, this is why people don't trust mainstream media sources anymore. They rather go to the internet for their media, or to podcasters, because when you're going to tell someone that something they see before their very eyes isn't true just because it doesn't fit a certain political narrative, that's when people stop trusting the media, and they deserve it. Unoffensive, and I say this as a Christian. Okay. Towards this Jocelyn, which Colorado situation. I think we're both talking about the situation in what city of Colorado is? Can someone point that out? I forgot. I can use my desktop here. I'm just trying, being lazy. Unknown devices. Are we going to war for Israel? Um, so that is a complicated question. First of all, I'm not a decision maker in this. I can't say what we are doing. What I will say is most likely the case is that the U.S. government knew of and approved of Israel's strike on Iran. For those who don't know, Iran is one of our biggest adversaries. When Bush talked about the axis of evil 25 years ago, they were one of those countries he was referring to. Now, of course, we didn't listen because most of us didn't like the neoconservative agenda of trying to preemptively go after all of our enemies. But they were one of our staunch enemies. Russia, Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Iraq, not anymore, but Iran has been one of our staunchest enemies. If you watch Top Gun Maverick, they never literally say who the enemy is in that country, but it is highly implied if you look at all the signs in Top Gun Maverick that that country was Iran. Iran has been one of our longest adversaries, so much so that we previously armed Saddam Hussein. So if you want to know how this stuff came about with Iraq, we were previously close allies with Saddam Hussein back in the uh, 80s, and we armed him and trained some of his folks to use him to go against Iran. Iran has also been funding many of the um, have been funding the jihadists and these uh, folks attacking Israel like Hamas and others. They have been behind that. So they've been our enemy for a long time. So we wouldn't be going to war for Israel. This is very much so a team effort here. Very much so a team effort. And again, we do not want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Israel doesn't either because who's the closest target to them? Israel. We don't want them either because we don't need uh, volatile nation states like Iran having access to nuclear missiles. So it won't be a war for Israel. It'll be a war with Israel against Iran. And again, this is look, there have been so many possible tipping points for war with Iran over the past 50 years. People just don't know. Again, like I said, if you watch Top Gun Maverick, she came out what 3 years ago now. The bad guy in that they actually I think initially it was actually in the script, but they took it out because just like the first Top Gun movie, they didn't want it to be obvious who the enemies were in those movies, so that it could have like a sort of timeless sort of effect. Like in Top Gun One, it's in the first Top Gun movie, it's highly implied that the enemy then were the Soviets, was the Soviet Union. Like the MiG jets, those were Soviet jets. So it was highly implied that in the first movie, those that was the Soviet Union. But being that they never actually named them, uh, you can watch the movie and substitute any current American enemy for that enemy in the movie. Same with the sequel, Top Gun Maverick, but it's highly implied that that was Iran. Faisal says you are talking nonsense. Again, simply disagreeing with someone is not a refutation of what they said. To refute someone, you need to defend your reasons why you disagree with them. This is philosophy 101. This is debate 101. Unofficial says the stream has a 20-minute delay. It's not a 20-minute delay. What it is that I'm answering everyone in the chat room. So it's going to be delayed from when I get to somebody's comments because I'm showing respect by going over addressing everyone who's left a comment. But like I said, if you put something in the comment section addressing something that was said 20 minutes ago, just use a proper name. Don't use a pronoun. That way I know to what you're actually referring. Because if you just said him, he, she, her, I don't know whom you're referring to because that was probably 20 minutes ago in the chat. Since I've glanced the down the comment section as I'm reading along with you guys in the chat room. Faisal says you can't point where Germany is on the map. Yes, I can. I literally trained there. I literally went. I was literally army. I trained in Germany. I literally know where Germany is. Guten Tag, dumbass. Anyway, Jace has just come here legally. I'm from Cuba, came here to the USA in 1998, just coming legally, simple. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this to be fair. The the immigration process in America is needlessly long and bureaucratic. However, if you came here the right way, you don't want to. Here's the thing: the immigrants who came here legally, like J.E., they are the main ones who dislike illegal immigrants because look, they're like, man, we had to come here and do everything the hard way. Yes, it may have taken us years to finally get our immigration status or whatever, but we did it the right way. But now you're telling me that all these people can come here illegally and they get rewarded for it. They come here illegally and they get $10,000 in cash and food stamp benefits. Like there's no other country that would reward illegal immigrants for violating their immigration laws. Only in America would we not only turn a blind eye to people violating immigration laws, but actually reward them for doing so. You know who that pisses off more? It doesn't. It pisses off Americans, but you know who it pisses off more than Americans? It pisses off the immigrants who are here legally because they they came here through a through the a lengthy and legal process to be here, and they weren't rewarded with $10,000 in food stamps, with uh, housing, some housing benefits, um, and being sent to communities where they're instantly given all sorts of benefits. Like, no, they had to come here and scrimp and scrave and do things the hard way just to see a bunch of other folks come here illegally and get rewarded for it. I would be more pissed off as an immigrant who came here legally than anyone else. Because if I came here, it took me like 5 years to go through the process, get my green card, all this other sort of stuff. And now, I'm applying for citizenship. And then I see these people just come over here during the previous Biden administration and get handed all sorts of benefits, getting $10,000 on their SNAP card, on their EBT card, um, get sent to nice little places in Chicago and New York and Ohio or whatever, or see people come here illegally and they commit crimes and they just get a slap on the wrist and get released right afterwards with no serious punishment. I would be highly pissed as a legal immigrant seeing that illegal immigrants are being treated better. Like, how does that how does that you know how demoralizing that would be? Like, how does that motivate people to do the right thing when you see a government incentivizing people for doing the wrong thing? So I can completely agree with J.E. Tor says, yes, I can. She said Jeremy's in the Indian Ocean, right? Like Sri Lanka area. She's being facetious, guys. Honor friend says, you track me? No, I'm not tracking you. Jocelyn says, with Venezuelan gangs, Aurora's police chief stated that there is no evidence of full-scale takeover of apartment buildings or the gang controls properties at Tor Lover. Again, closed caption TV footage shows otherwise. We literally saw images of them going to people's door, going from door to door with guns, forcing those people out of their homes. This was not a rumor. This was not untrue. It happened. Now, we can we can now we can argue of 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 what scale this happened on, but we're not going to debate whether it actually happened. It did actually indeed happen. We can debate how how widespread it was and to the or to what extent it was happening. But we're not going to what we're not going to do is be disingenuous and say it didn't happen because it did. But we can if we're going to, you know, if we're going to debate the minutiae of what happened, sure, we can talk about how widespread it was or to what extent this actually happened. But it did happen. CCTV footage doesn't lie. Tori says, "Oh yeah, I heard about that. Actually, from Aurora, she said I've been by those apartments. It's not a bad area, really, and I've never heard of anything like that after that event took place. Yeah, I think, like I said, I don't think it was widespread. What I would say is we did see it happen. I think because it is a vivid uh, it is a vivid image. Like if you certain things are conjure like like will evoke strong emotions when you see these things happening when you see them on news, like plane crashes, murders, um, uh, war, um, seeing people getting held up at gunpoint, stuff like that. But it that did happen. Now, was this a one-time thing? Possibly. Also, do police chiefs not play politics to save face sometimes? Yes. Did we not see, for example, in the Dark Knight trilogy, Commissioner Gordon do that very thing during the Harvey Dent thing? Did 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 I know this is fictional, but get where I'm going here with this? And yes, also I am a nerd. But anyway, when Harvey Dent committed those atrocities, did Batman not say to him, "No, I did those things. I committed those murders." He's like, "But wait, you didn't do those things." He said, "Yes, I did." He said, "But that's not right. That's you're that's not you're not supposed to be that." He said, "I will be whatever Gotham needs me to be. So if I need to be the villain, I will be the villain." And Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, called it in just like that and made Batman public enemy number one to take the fall for Harvey Dent so that the Gotham could be rewarded with having their White Knight, someone they could believe in, so that the city didn't fall apart. So will a police chief lie to keep law and order? Yes, they definitely will. Visionary Justice, are you comfortable? Yeah, I just have a throat, uh, sore throat because I dehydrated. That's why I keep drinking water. Lakers and five says Gary with the T. Yeah, I'm not gay, brother. If that's what you mean. So I think Gary is on one of those radio shows. Either I forgot which one. I used to listen to all those little morning shows. I don't listen to the radio anymore though. I don't know if it's Steve Harvey or Rick Rick Ricky Smiley. Um, I think one of those two guys. Just a chill guy says, "Bro, what? to what? To what? To what thing are you referring?" Just a chill guy says, "It looks like you like dudes. It looks like you are projecting your own homosexual tendencies onto other people." Just a chill guy. Happily married, about to hit 8 years in 2 months, and never had a problem getting on a. But if you keep playing the gay games, you're just gonna get permanently banned. Again, a lot of these things are sliding because my moderators aren't in the chat right now. If they were, instant bans. Tor says yes, Army strong. Yes, I was set on being a Marine my whole life, but recently got diagnosed with PTSD due to childhood trauma, so it's going to be harder to do so, but not impossible. First of all, I'm sorry that you had PTSD. I hope you are receiving adequate treatment for it, and also, um, all is not lost because you can receive a medical waiver if and only if they don't think that it would impede your ability to be a good Marine. Um, PTSD, that's a hard one though. Here's the thing though. Um, when you go to MEPS, that's for folks that don't know what that is. That's the military entrance and processing station. MEPS whole the whole thing at MEPS is for them uh, to to um, to find people lacking and keep them from enlisting. But you you don't have to acknowledge everything in your past while you're at MEPS. Um, unless there's already something of which they know about, don't acknowledge it. Like I'm not saying lie. What I am saying is if it's not asked, don't tell. That's what I will say. But if it is something that's already known or in your history or in your packet when you want to talk to a recruiter, what I would say then is you would have to apply for a medical waiver, and you could probably get that through like the current uh, mental health clinician that you're working with if you are seeing one, or whoever you are working with to address your PTSD issues. But you can get some. You can try to get a medical waiver um, that explains that your prior condition has no bearing on you today and would not impede you from being a proud Marine or whatever branch you want to join. That's what I would advise. And like I said, to anyone else who's in the chat room who's aspiring to join the military, again, don't tell at the MEPS. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions to try to find people that they can exclude from enlisting. Don't give them ammunition to send you away. It's sort of like dating. When you first meet someone who you want to be a significant other, you don't give them reasons to not want to be with you, right? They can find it out later. No, well, I'm being half serious, but no, you don't give reasons. You don't give people a reason not to like you. Likewise, if you're enlisting, you don't give you don't give the people at the MEPS a reason to not let you join, right? So that's what I would say. But I'm not saying lie because then you would be joining under false pretenses, and that can come back to bite you in the ass later on during your your term of service. What I will say is, if it's not something asked, do not tell it. That's what I would say. But if it is something already known, then you are going to have to address it, and usually you can do so by trying to have a waiver or some professional um, uh, write in on your behalf saying that you are still adequate for service or whatever. Okay. Always be upfront with your recruiter, but don't be upfront with the people at the MEPS. The people in recruitment are trying to get you in. The people at the MEPS are trying to prevent you from getting in, to ensure that they have only the best selection of folks. So I might not have gotten in if I not if they knew, hey, he has an ulcer, he once struggled with clinical depression, even flat feet. Flat feet used to be an automatic removal. Now they just say, oh, you got flat feet. Does it cause you problems? Nope. All right, you can go through, because that's important when you have to do all those marches and rucking. But again, I never had problems with my feet during basic combat, even though I had flat feet, which used to be an automatic dismissal from the military. Now, a lot of other people had problems with their feet, and they didn't even have flat feet. People were getting their feet torn up during those road marches. Like they would have to put all that moleskin on the soles of their feet because they kept rub they kept messing up their feet. I think probably a lot of them would that was happening to a lot of them, either because they didn't have the proper size for their boots, or they weren't wearing their insulated layer of socks. You know, your your wool socks, that's the external part, and the internal one, the cotton ones. So I always wore mine like they showed us to do. So I never had a problem with my feet on any of our road marches or rucking. Uh, Justin says I've been around Aurora a few times. I liked it there. It was okay. Yeah, I haven't been to Colorado yet, although I've heard there are some uh, pretty women there. Tor says, Jocelyn, yeah, Aurora is really a nice place. Some neighborhoods can get violent, but not that bad. And I'm sure that's normal in the majority of cities in America, especially large ones. I don't see Aurora as a large city, though. I mean, not no diss to Aurora, at least not by the standards of a Northeast city, since I live in the Northeast. But that can make it worse because when you have a lot of violence per capita in a small city, that actually makes it worse. Val Candle says to you went too past. I don't know what you're trying to say. He said probably you're 43 or 45. I'm very close to that, a little around that. I'll say that much. I am Gen X, so I'm at least 45. I'll say that much. Uh, Anyone under 45 is not Gen X, because the last the last year of Generation X was 1980, which means the youngest Generation Xer is 45. Justin Brophy says, "Have you considered retracing your very vocal support for Jeffrey Epstein? Do you regret going to his island in March of 2014?" You thought that was clever. You thought that was clever. How does that work for you? Do you like posing stupid questions that only you think are funny? You see how it works when people ask dumb questions that are only addressed to one person, no one else really gets. You see how you probably need to stop sucking down Diddy oil and being a libtard. Anyway, Pale Candle says all humanity comes from Africa. That's it. Well, yes, that's true, but that's not it, unfortunately. I'm sorry, Valley Candle. I should probably put on my glasses. Um, Cookie Monster 5 6 says this ain't Lil Wayne. This is Big Wayne. Valley Candle says all genome or same actually comes from Africa. No, the human genome is not all the same. If the human genome was all the same, we wouldn't have different human populations. The fact that we have different human populations is why we have things like population genetics. Even even if every person is 99.999% correct, it is that minuscule percentage which makes all the difference in the world. For instance, humans and bonobos are about 98 point something percent genetically similar. It's that little minute difference, though, that small, very small difference, percentage and difference that accounts for a huge difference between humans and bonobos. So those very small differences account for a lot when it comes uh, to genetics. I love Bug A, for instance, adjustable six, haha. Yeah, adjustable, ain't nothing wrong with an adjustable six. Look, a woman who is feminine, inspirational, agreeable, or submissive, if you want to say, will will make someone who's an adjustable six seem like a 10 because they're someone you want to be with. Whereas someone who's a 9 or a 10, but they're utterly disagreeable, they're mean spirited, they're unloyal, they're masculine, that would drop them down to a 5. Look at Brittany Renner. Excuse me, Brittany Renner. After she hit the wall, she she couldn't make the ridiculous demands that she used to. So she caught herself now being a devout Muslim and engaging in uh, adultery. Because I mean, call it what you want, but if you dating a married man, that's we don't allow bigamy here in the United States. Torres says, yeah, we all came from Africa back in human history. I'm not an expert, but I assume all humans were originally black because the melatonin helps protect the harmful UV rays that Africa is known for. What's up? What's up, J.A.C? Well, yes and no. I was, as far as them all being black Africans, uh, kind of, sort of, because I mean, there's still this debate between the migration out of Africa, whether the diversity started before the migration or the diversity in human population started after the migration. A lot of the evidence is showing it's a combination of both, that there was more diversity after the migration. So people became a separate population in Europe and in Central Asia, right? And parts of the Middle East and North Africa, whatever. Uh, but we also know that the whole idea that there was a bottleneck of modern humans that squeezed out of Africa into the rest of the onto the rest of the globe um, wasn't may not have been exactly how we saw it back then. I mean, one thing we know is the continental Africa has the most genetic diversity in the world. So that is true. And yeah, the people who originally came out of Africa were of brown skin. That's definitely a fact. Matter of fact, we know that ancient Europeans had darker skin. These were a lot of a lot of the neo Nazis and white supremacists aren't going to like this fact and will probably dispute it. But this has been backed up by several lines of converging evidence that the early Europeans were of a browner skin. I mean, and it makes sense because the definition of whiteness has changed over centuries anyway. When you look back to ancient Greece and Rome, these were olive skinned people. And for them, they considered them, well, sorry, not thems, they considered themselves the epitome of whiteness as it would have been known back then. They considered the, the paler skinned people of Northern Europe to be barbarians. They considered the dark skinned people of of ancient Nubia, which would have been like modern day Sudanese or Ethiopian people, as well as some of the black skinned people living in North Africa. Um, they would have been considered barbarians as well. Some of the people in the Middle East would have been considered barbarians. As far as the Greeks, as far as the Greeks of the Hellenistic age were considered, anyone who didn't who lived outside of the Greek city states of places like Athens, Sparta, Thrace, Crete, if you weren't part of those big uh, Greek city states, you were a barbarian. If you were from one of those Germanic tribes from the north, you were a barbarian. They considered they considered what was white to be what they looked like, olive skinned people from that region of the world between modern day Greece, Turkey, you know, um, and the surrounding islands. So, but yeah, I mean, if you want to say everyone was originally black, yes, with the caveat that I don't, they wouldn't have defined it as black back then necessarily, but they would have been all. You definitely could have said they were all brown skin, right? And then later on, some of them who stayed in the sub-Saharan region of Africa, were of darkest became of darker skin, kinky coiled, kinky curled hair to protect against the sun. Uh, Whereas the people who moved into Europe developed paler skin, especially as they wore a lot of clothing to protect them against the cold, and developed narrow nasal passages to heat the air before they breathed it. Um, they developed a tolerance for drinking milk, cow's milk. Um, the people of the Central Asian steppes developed epicanthic folds around their eyes, aka chinky eyes, because it protected their eyes from the sun of the Central Asian steppes that often, reflected off off the land. So their epicanthic folds on their eyelids were basically sun goggles, right? Towards the skin color only changed when we migrated to colder, less sun-seen areas. It also got darker depending on where you lived. I mean, when you look at biogeography, people closer to the equator generally have darker skin, whereas people farther removed from the equator generally have paler skin. and that's across the globe. You can see that even in the Native Americans who live closer to the equator tend to be darker. The Native Americans who live far from the equator, um, like the Inuit people and native and other Native Alaskans and stuff like that, paler skin. Veli says talking about human races are all same. Well, if human races are all the same, then there wouldn't be human races, and that's just definitively not true. There is some biological reality to racial differences. Again, when we talk about about the races being 99.99999 all the same, that 0.0000001% makes all the differences in the world. Here's the thing. We know the races have biological reality to them because we know that there are some medical diseases that only affect some racial ethnic groups and not others. We have like Tay-Sachs disease that only affects people who are of Jewish descent, or of Tetsi disease, and others that affect only black people. As a matter of fact, there are there is in current research right now, people who are trying to develop race-based weapons. You can't make race-based weapons if race isn't a biological thing. If if there's no biological reality to race, you can't make race-based weapons. But there is in current development and research in certain militaries, uh, the effort to make race-based weapons because biological differences in the races are real. Physical anthropologists can use skeletal remains to identify the race of that previous living person. We know there are skeletal differences amongst different racial groups. We know that black people have a more pronounced jaw structure, like a jutting jaw line, and sort of a sloping sort of face. Now, if you're mixed racial ancestry, that might might be more complicated to uh, to adduce. But we know that people of European, typically Northern European, have less pronounced jaw lines than people of Black African ancestry. And we know people of East Asian ancestry flat, have sort of a flat looking skeletal skull feature. It looks flat. It's not doesn't jut out like Black Africans, and it's not as and it's less flat. And it's more flat than European uh, skulls. So a physical anthropologist can identify the race of a person just looking at their skeletal remains. If races aren't real, then that wouldn't be able to be done, would it? And also, if race wasn't biologically real, we wouldn't have certain illnesses that only affect certain ethnic groups. Uh, Oniphus says, just in case you're not on Mars, you have a 20 plus minute delay. Mars. Um, and C says a lot of blacks were taken to the islands. Well, yeah, I mean during the transatlantic slave trade, you went to either to Caribbean, you went to the Caribbean, you went to South America, or you came to the United States and Canada. There are far more black people in Brazil than in any other place in the world other than Africa itself. There are more black people in Brazil than there are in any other place in the world other than Africa itself. Bailey says, "Hey guys, topic is not his color. Be gentle." Um, and sees is actually the first blacks that showed up head over, thrown a ship headed to South America, and were not treated as slaves. This has nothing to do with the celebration of the U.S. Army's 250th celebration, birthday. That is, sorry. But again, people are going to debate history. We're not doing armchair history here. Again, I was a history nerd back in school, and unlike some of you, I had to pass a U.S. civics exam for my graduation. I know my history. I also used to write up questions for bonus points in my high school history class for my teacher, because that's how much of a history nerd I was. I would actually make up bonus questions for our exams in my high school class for bonus points. Now, again, I don't know who were the very first blacks to come here with other Europeans specifically, but I know that the first ones generally who came here sailed with the Spanish conquistadors. And one such person is Stephen Estevanico. Why is this damn. All right. Sorry. There it is. Okay, Army Reserve, let's go. Yeah, so Estevanico, yeah, I got it right. Also known as Mustafa Azamori and Esteban de Dorantes and Estevanico the Moor was the first person of African descent to explore North America uh, circa 1500 to 1539. He was one of the last four survivors of the Narvaez expedition, along with Alvor Nunez Cabeza de Vaca, Andre Dorantes de Carnaza, and Alfonso del Castillo Maldonado. So I learned about him in my world history class as well. So he's known as the first person of African descent to explore North America. But this was in the early 1500s. Again, this is saying what I already told you guys. He was, we don't know too much about him, but we know he was sold into slavery. Um, in the Portuguese controlled Moroccan town of Azamora on the Atlantic coast. He was sold to Andre Dorantes de Carranza. It is unclear whether he was raised Muslim, but Spain did not allow non Catholics to travel to New Spain, which is what they called the New World back then. So he would have been baptized as a Catholic in order to join the expedition. His Christian name, Estevan, a Spanish form of Stephen, supports this. That's your first black person in America. Point blank, period, shut up. I think they were treated as indentured servants. Well, Estevanico was originally a slave who became an explorer or conquistador maybe. Um, Again, the people who arrived in 1619 to the Jamestown colony Uh, Most of them were indentured servants. Some of them were slaves, but many of them earned their freedom and became part of the early black elite in America, in colonial America. Anyway, let's kind of keep this tethered back to the Army 250th celebration and the protest this in response to it. Um, Lockport Deuce is always forgetting the Barbary slave trade. I have not forgotten the Barbary slave trade. In fact, well, you're new to my live stream. I have literally mentioned this Barbary slave trade multitudes of times, and that's not the only one. I've literally said that because there was this little female hotep that came. The last time was actually about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever. There was this female hotep on my stream. I was calling out a lot of stuff that had nothing to do with the live stream, by the way, just like you guys are doing now. And I had to point out some facts about history. First of all, slavery was a condition of humanity throughout the ancient world. It was not invented in America. Two, I pointed out that there was probably more Europeans transported through the Barbary slave trade than there were black people transplanted through the transatlantic slave trade. That's something also that I acknowledge. Third, I also acknowledge there was more black people being transported through the Arabic slave trade, which is still going on to this day. Not to mention that the last country to criminalize slavery in Africa didn't do so until 2015, which is Mauritania. Look it up. I pointed out all of these things. So I did not forget the Barbary slave trade, nor did I forget the Arabic slave trade, nor did I forget the fact that Africa is still practicing slavery to this day in some of the very places where they sold us out to the Europeans and gave us uh, to the British and the Americans. They're still doing it in those very same countries. I didn't forget any of that. Again, history nerd. Um, NC said there's a lot of books written about it. NC said that's very interesting about Socrates. Yeah. Another thing people don't know about Socrates is he's a war hero. He was damn near he was damn near Rambo. Imagine Rambo also being the brightest person in the world. I know, hard to fact, but no. Imagine Socrates was called the wisest man of Athens. Imagine Rambo coming coming to New York City, well, or wherever, and saying he's the wisest person in America. You'd be like, what? He was a celebrated war hero during the Peloponnesian War when Athens went to war against Sparta. He actually saved one of his best friends. He saved became a general of the Athenian army, Alcibiades, and became one of the people who was with him during his trial and death. Hey Agatha, been missing you here. I need kind of need your help with the moderation. And if you don't mind, can you please post my Cash App in the description? I mean, in the chat room, please. NC says AI. I think it. So you when you say AI, I guess you're talking about the current fear of the newest technology that's going to destroy us is now AI. Because we moved on from the web, internet, social media, from computers and TVs and radios. Now the newest fear is going to be AI, generative AI. We're thinking the generative AI is going to fool us into thinking all sorts of things. Generative AI will fall under rules and procedures to prevent its abuse, just like every other technology that's come before it. But AI is the current fear right now, I believe. So that you're right to point that out. Veli says, well, nowadays everyone's interest about skin color, interested about skin color, but why not the science? Because a lot of people don't like human sciences, or they're just, or and a lot of people are just science illiterate. But I mean, these things exist. Things like population genetics, um, uh, um, cultural anthropology, cultural anthropology and physical anthropology, biogeography, um, and other related sorts of uh, domains of science related to the study of different human populations. I remember there was even a move away from talking about races to talking about like um, geographic clines and stuff like that. But I think that's outside of geography. I don't really think that really caught on. I think people still realize the the practicality of referring to ethno-racial groups, even if they don't exist biologically in the way that we use them in the social cultural context, if that makes sense. Uh, Omar says, yeah. And he says, I think artificial intelligence is going to be bad. People will literally stop thinking. I don't think so, because here's the thing, and I've brought this up in a previous live stream, as well as talking about this with friends as well. It's not going to stop thinking, because to use AI still takes critical thinking skills. Like, this is what I brought up in a previous stream. Like, even with ChatGPT or with Grok or with Google Gemini, you still need to have background knowledge and use critical thinking skills, because sometimes these these generative AI models will churn out bad information, because Google Gemini, Grok, and ChatGPT were not made to give out accurate information. They are large language models um, that build off of more information being fed to it, so they can churn out information on any topic. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the information they turn out will be true. Presumably, the larger the database it accumulates, with a wider breadth of information, it's more likely to hit upon accurate information. But that's not necessarily the case. This is why it has to be constantly fact checked by its users and by its developers. I will I have, when using Google Gemini, multiple times have shown it to be wrong, and it will acknowledge the fact that it was wrong on some previous information that it turned out to me. But that's only because I already had the background knowledge in the thing in which I was asking Google Gemini, and that I had the critical thinking skills to know that just because it turned out information to me did not uh, imply that it was true. So if you already lack those critical thinking skills, if you already lack background knowledge in the very thing in which you are trying to attain from a generative AI model, then you're going to be at a disadvantage, because the people who can do those very things are going to be the ones who can use them the best. So then this is going to happen for college students. If a student is complete, if a student isn't doing their actual work in their coursework, they're not actually doing their coursework, whether reading and studying and coming to the lectures and discussions or labs, they're going to be at a disadvantage to the people who are, because even though they may be both using the same AI tools, they won't know when they're being fed bad information. The professor will, though. The professor will definitely say, "Yeah, you just turned this out from ChatGPT without fact checking it." So, and that's actually happened today in college classes. River says, "I love your videos. Thank you." Agnes says, "Hi everyone. As you come in, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you." Veli says, "NC, you're right about that." She hit. Thank you, Agatha. She put the. This is my Cash App, guys. If anyone wants to contribute to my channel, $ just a contrarian, or you can drop it in the super chat here. You can drop a super chat, a super sticker, or a what is these little jewel things here called gems, or the gifts. So you can drop a super chat, a super sticker, or a gift in the chat room. You drop a super chat, it will highlight your comment for everyone to see. If you drop a super sticker, it's going to leave an image across the screen for everyone to see. If you drop a GIF, it's going to be an animated image that everyone can see. And it's funny, we're talking about artificial information right now. They're doing the army parade. They're showing the robot dog. I guess you guys might want to see this. That is real. That is not AI, by the way. That is real. So since we're talking about AI, I thought this would be pertinent. Those are real robots. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Uh, Good movie, by the way. Classic Clint Eastwood. Uh, Part of the Fistful of Dollars trilogy. He said, "Just my opinion. If people aren't for the American way, there are plenty of other countries out there." Amen. Amen. I literally, brother, I literally said that at the very beginning of my live stream 2.5 hours ago. That is literally what I opened up with, because I was saying we're celebrating the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army and U.S. Flag Day. If people got a problem with that, I pretty much said what you said. uh, Taurus says maybe, yeah. From what I've seen, AI is being used to do things that are pretty easy to do, like take tests and write emails. People freaked out when ChatGPT's servers crashed. They were like, "Oh no, how will I ever think on my own?" Look, they're spoiled, Tora. As someone from Gen X, and anyone who's Gen X, or even an older millennial can attest to, when we wanted information, we didn't have the World Wide Web. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have ChatGPT. You know how we got information? It was one of two ways. Well, one of three ways. One was you asked your parents. but but aside from your parents, the two ways you got information, if you were a millennial born in the early 80s, a Generation X, or a baby boomer, or a silent generation, for those few people who might be silent generation in the chat, we had to go all the way to the library using the Dewey Decimal System to find what we wanted. And then we could find a book or an article on it. Sometimes we would have to use microfiche. You guys remember microfiche? We could find old newspaper and magazine clippings on microfiche to find things. Or our parents in the 80s got guilt tripped into buying us encyclopedias at the supermarket. Yes, they bought us encyclopedias at the supermarket. Like, hey, let's get some Oscar Mayer bologna, some pizza bagels, and an encyclopedia. Yeah. And sometimes they released it as an entire volume, or the other times, instead of buying the entire encyclopedic set, you had to buy it one volume at a time. Like, you come to the supermarket the first week and is volume A, then 2 weeks later is volume B, and so on. But yeah, those were the only two ways we found information back then. Was either you go to the library or you looked it up in the encyclopedia. If you were really really nerdy, you might had a computer and internet. Yes, internet did exist in the 80s before the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web and internet are two separate things. The internet is you know the internet has existed since the 60s when it started with DARPANet through the military. And by the 80s, there were some nerdy people who did have access to the internet, but the only thing the internet had back then was email and Usenet groups, the online discussion boards. And those Usenet groups still exist to this day, 40 plus years later, by the way. Um, but unless you were one of those super nerdy people who had uh, internet service and can go onto those little Usenet groups that look up information, the only other way was the library or encyclopedias. I know you meant AI Torah, so I already automatically corrected it. Omar says, what good has happened to you lately? Well, again, I went to an Asian festival earlier. It was fun. It was just too small. Pause. um, but I went to this Asian festival earlier today. Um, bought some new Muay Thai. Well, I got some new Muay Thai trunks from my friend. Um, I finished the 7 mile run today, even though I felt like I was gonna quit because I was just so I had I was lacking so much energy. I helped a I'm helping a friend in the Philippines who's doesn't have much money to help her, well, not get on her feet, but at least have some money for, like, buying some food for her and her daughter. She's been on my live streams this earlier this week twice. And for people who were on those previous live streams with me, I am still taking money for Micah. If you guys want to help Micah out, I am still taking money on her behalf to give to her. So anyone who wants to contribute to me, I will be giving that money to Micah. Um, so far, I think I've earned about a few dollars for her. I'm not gonna say exactly how much because she might not want me to put that out there, but she so people think I'm mean. I'm really not mean. Like I just I just I just will roast people who insult me. But I'm really not that mean. But yeah, I've had on a friend from the Philippines who, you know, 3 years ago she lost everything in a super typhoon, um, which there's usually a super typhoon that threatens the Philippine Islands every year. And in one such occurrence, she lost her house and her belongings, and her child had to relocate to a different part of the Philippines without much to do. And I think she's kind of hopped from call center to call center to support herself since then. But she needs money just to put in for her employment. Everything costs in the Philippines, and we talked about that ad nauseum in my last live stream about that. Is very expensive to be poor in the Philippines. I know that sounds contradictory, but if you parse what I'm saying, it makes a lot of sense. It is very expensive to be poor in the Philippines, and it's was America is getting that way so as well, where it's becoming expensive to be poor in America as well. What When I say it becomes expensive to be poor, what I mean is that you will pay. You, it becomes very costly not to have access to uh, discretionary income. You pay for a lot of things that a lot of people wouldn't have to worry about. Valley says, Tora, think about it. If power, if the power is shut off globally, I mean, that's a possibility. NC says AI is doing a lot more on a level we don't even see. Well, the other issue is the whole. you have all these people believing in the whole singularity thing. And again, I've addressed that in the live stream as well. I'm actually going to do a whole separate live stream on that pretty soon. I just haven't done it yet, but I actually had that planned for the past 2 weeks. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But I will say the whole problem with these futurists predicting the downfall of humanity through some AI singularity is just very dubious, and it shows a kind of fundamental appreciation of certain philosophical concepts that we've known for like 1,000 years, because these same arguments have been embedded in religious arguments, and they're just as fallacious then as they are now, just repackaged under AI, under strong AI. Bailey says NC, nope. And NC says engineering, etc. Bailey says NCAI is just collects info from the internet. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily churn out accurate information. It just gives you a wide breadth of information to which you can access. A wide breadth of information does not equal accurate information. It just means the more information you're giving, the more likely you will hit one of those uh, one of those assertions that are true. But generative AI, and this goes into me also being one of my third majors was linguistics. It goes into computational linguistics. Generative AI are just large language models. The more they interact with people, the larger these databases grow, and that gives it more access to information that may be accurate, but they themselves don't necessarily endeavor to give you accurate information. And most of these generative AI programs will actually be upfront and tell you that as well. I know the Chat GPT does. Bailey says, and see, if you switch off your net, it's useless. Yeah. Taurus says, if global power shut off, humanity would probably struggle for a quick moment. I don't think it'd be some extension event, like some might say, but it's a hard adjustment too quickly. It depends on the length. It, well, first of all, there's no global power grid. Every countries have separate power grids, and even regions within those countries have separate power grids. For instance, Texas has its own power grid because it's such a large state. They have a power grid that they made separate from the the uh, the big U.S. Power grid that powers most of the Northeast and Midwest, stuff like that. Um, there's no power now. If you're thinking of like maybe some sort of uh, mega some mega solar flare, they would take out all our electronics. Oh wait! I want to let you guys hear this. That badge that person had, that's special forces, guys. Yeah. Uh, for folks who don't know, the military loves Trump. I'm just gonna say, not everyone in the military agrees with Trump, but by and large, most most of the troops love Trump. And I can't say that of every president, but most of the troops love Trump. Anyway, the whole issue of a mega solar flare ending all of electronics, that's more fiction than reality. It's again, this is one of the things that they used to talk about on Doomsday Preppers on the the National Geographic channel back like 15 years ago. It is it is more where it is genuinely possible. It is so unlikely that it's not taken as a real threat because it's just the prop. Just because something is genuinely possible doesn't make it probable. But the the idea of a mega solar flare single-handedly wiping out all of our electronics across the world is it's not it's not a probable event. It's genuinely possible, yes, but it's very improbable. AI does a lot like writing computer code, and they are trying to get it to reason like a person. That's another thing it's not going to do. It can't reason like a person because, again, as I've mentioned in several of the live streams and videos in the past, there's a basic human AI problem that AI researchers know about and philosophy researchers know about. I mean, philosophers know about and cognitive science know about. That is basically the fact that AI cannot do human reasoning because the philosophers still don't understand one of the most basic forms of human reasoning, which is called abductive reasoning, which is also called inference to the best explanation. You can't program AI to do that because we don't know how it actually works. It's called um, again, it's called inference or reasoning to the best explanation because they're in in abductive reasoning or inference to the best explanation. What happens is a you have a set of premises and then you have a conclusion, but that conclusion doesn't actually follow from the premises. There is some sort of explanatory gap between the premises and the conclusion, and we don't know how to explain it. We haven't been able to we haven't been able to formalize to make to to formalize that how that inference works. We know it works, and we know why it works. We don't know how it works. Okay, and until the philosophers can explain it, cognitive science can't uh, define it. And if the cognitive researchers can't define it, then the AI researchers can't implement it. And this has been a problem in AI for decades. It is one of the most fundamental is one of the most fundamental problems in getting in machine learning to get basically machines to think like humans. Abductive reasoning is one of the most universal forms of human reasoning, but we don't know how it works. And if we don't know how it works, we can't define it and we can't implement it, which means without it, we can't have strong AI, which means without strong AI, we can't get to the so called AI singularity. So uh, there you go. Valley says, and see this happens because AI collects info from the internet. He said, did you try it without internet? And see it's going to run or already does water plants, electric grid, subway system, etc. All right, yeah, this is so far off the topic. Uh, JJ says, damn, Barack Obama's looking old these days. Yeah, so is your mother, but she's still sucking my dick, JJ. Everybody give it up for JJ's mother, who's a professional dick sucker. Don't matter whether you 12-inch or 2-inch, she'll do the job. Trust me, she'll take it from the rooter to the tutor. She gets like a ball. She gets like a basketball through a garden hose. Ain't that right, JJJ? So don't knock someone because they're old. Because again, we don't knock your mom. She still sucked that dick like a professional. Mm-mm-mm. Valley says education has become a trade object. I don't know what that means. Uh, he said you're thinking in a one-dimensional way. I see the answer it generates if I do a search, but if it's not reliable to me. Taurus says I use AI a lot, but mainly just for therapeutic venting and just genuine knowledge gain or curiosity. Yeah, I will shoot the breeze with Google Gemini if I'm genuinely curious on something, or if I just want to see how how wide breadth its knowledge is. Sometimes it's rewarding, sometimes it's not. But I think sometimes debating with that artificial AI, I mean, excuse me, with generative AI can be a bit like mental masturbation. As he says, if you ask a question 2 different ways, it answers different ways. That's true. Anyway, I'm getting off of that because they're gonna discuss that ad nauseum, and that's not the subject of this live stream. Secure payment says no, we don't. Africa has way more love. I don't know what that means, but again, I won't live there, and until they pay us Black Americans our reparations for for selling us into bondage, I don't care. I mean, if Africa really cared about Black Americans, they would have offered us what Israel offered to all the Jewish people of the diaspora, which is um, citizenship, right? Within the African Union, there are I think 50 countries within that current African Union, or 50 no, I think it's 52 countries within the African Union, excluding 2 countries, which would make the 54 countries in total for Africa. And out of those 52 nations, the AU could say Black Americans anywhere within the African Union, you guys have a return, uh, get a rights of rights of return to your homeland with citizenship, and also certain uh, certain benefits such as land or entrepreneurial benefits, something like that. They've never offered anything of the sort except for Ghana. Ghana has, and even that's been limited. But outside of like Ghana and one other country, I think it was, I don't know if it was Liberia or not. I don't know if it was Chad, Nigeria, Niger, or Liberia or Sierra Leone, but it's like literally only been like two countries out of 54 countries in Africa that offered Black Americans any incentive for returning, which could have been a way of correcting for their part in the transatlantic slave trade. So, and this is not a diss to Africans. I love, my Africans, love my Caribbean folks, love my Afro Latinos, but we are not the same folks. Foundational Black Americans, we are a distinct lineage, and until we see these African nations try to make amends for their part in the kingdoms of which they came from, that took part in the slave trade, and some of these countries still do. Yeah. Um, yeah, y'all still talking about that AI stuff. I'm skipping all of that. That's yeah. Huggy Bear says, "Oh my God, one man gang." I don't know what that means. Um, Mara Gross 617 says, "I know where I'm from. 1 year or more in prison, you get deported. Um, under you, unless you don't necessarily something. I don't know what that's saying." Um, Taurus's permanent resident status is a privilege, while citizenship is a right. I think that's the way to say it. Yeah, but if you're not a natural born citizen, citizenship is still a privilege because you had to earn the citizenship. Um, like I said, on you earn the citizenship en route to being a permanent residence. I mean, yeah, gaining your permanent residence status. Like first you come here, as an immigrant through the visa process, right? And through that you get your green card, and then the green card allows you to apply for citizenship. So the fact that you apply for it doesn't mean it's a right. Citizenship is a right to anyone who is of who's a natural born citizen. Like if you were if you were born here, but what they're trying to stop now is people who take uh, I forgot the term for it, birth trips. People who come here just for the purposes of birthing their child to make so that they're American, and then through that child, since that child is now born an American, then the parent stays here too to raise them. And what they've been trying to do is say, no, that's not, that wasn't, they're misinterpreting that constitutional amendment. The constitutional amendment they're using to justify um, people coming here, having a child which is born here in America and receiving American citizenship, was originally only applicable to to the freedmen, the foundational Black Americans, the freedmen, because after slaves were not considered American citizens, and after their emancipation, their status in America was indeterminable So they went ahead and made a constitution saying no, anyone born in this country is uh is is a citizen. But what Trump and others have been arguing is saying that that was only meant to apply to the emancipated slaves. That was not meant to apply to foreigners who come to America and give birth to a child just for the purposes of staying here. He's saying they are stretching the original scope of that constitutional amendment. That's what's in contention. Agatha says, "Hi everyone. Could you please like um, the live and share and subscribe? Thank you." Veli says, "Tori, if it means a guess, it means you can't work. But with green card, you can after you've had social security number, isn't it? It depends. Like Maryland is a so-called sanctuary state where even if you come here as an illegal immigrant, they will grant you a social security number um, and the ability to work so that you can pay taxes. I literally had a social worker explain this to me because before I was married, I was dating another Filipina and we were talking about bringing her here. And I talked to a social worker at the time. I was like, if I was to bring someone here, no, no, well, I didn't put it that way. I said, if someone was to come here, because I wasn't going to put our situation on blast. I said, if someone was to come here and they overstayed their visa, um, but wanted to um, stay here and work and live. I was like, can they do that? And she was like, well, technically they're an illegal immigrant, but we will give them a social security number so that they can work, so they can start paying taxes into the state. I was like, I get you. So again, that's for Maryland. That is not for every other state. Um, Tora says I did subbed and like. Thank you, Tora. Appreciate it very much. She said I'm going to come back for more streams. The streamer is genuine. Thank you. Appreciate it. Taurus Valley, I honestly don't know. I don't know very much about immigration and the process, so I don't want to give an opinion on something I'm not educated on very well. See, that is a reasonable response. That see, I appreciate something like that. When you don't know something, it's okay to say, you know what, I'll have to look into it further because I don't know. That is a that was a perfectly rational response. It's something I say all the time when people ask me things and I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know something that I don't know just to sound smart. Which, by the coincidentally, that's literally what Socrates said. When people hear the quote, "All I know is that I know nothing," that's not what he actually said. What he actually said was what I pretty much said. The different He said, "If I am wiser than any other man in Athens, it is only because, unlike them, I don't pretend to know something that I don't know, just just to sound wiser than other people." That was literally what he said. And well, you take it the transliteration. Valley says, "Tor, I don't know either, bro." uh, NC says, "While Russia was trying to help the communists in Afghanistan." Yeah, that was messy too. You're going way, way back to what we talked about earlier in the stream when I said that America once backed Iraq and funded Saddam Hussein's rise to fight against Iran back in the 80s. Um, Likewise, we we funded and trained in Afghanistan, guess who? The Taliban, to fight against the Soviets that were in Afghanistan at the time. Yes, we funded and trained the Taliban. If you don't believe me, you can already watch Rambo 3 and it talks about this. Like, because this was I think Rambo 3 came out in 1989. And yeah, we we considered them the good guys back then. We were funding these these Muslim rebels that became the Taliban. We funded them and we trained them. Our military trained the Taliban, and our government funded them um, to support um, their fight with the Soviets in Afghanistan. Yeah. Valley says the question is why countries have nukes. Why do countries have nukes for? Because they're the ultimate deterrent. That's why. This is how we won World War II. This is how we ended the war in the Pacific arena during World War II and ended World War II. We dropped those nukes on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and Japan was like, "All right, we're out. We're not doing this anymore." We also firebombed Tokyo, which was why they didn't drop a nuke on Tokyo because they had already firebombed Tokyo, and they didn't want to wipe out the entire hub of the most important political hub of Japan at the time, which was Tokyo. So instead, they dropped it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, um, and it ended World War II. This is why we have nukes because they are the ultimate deterrent. That's why we have them. And the permanent members of the UN Security Council were all the um, countries that were nuclear armed. Okay, the U.S., the U.K., France, Russia, which was then the Soviet Union, and China. These are just killing each other. No, again, it's a deterrent. It's like self defense, bro. Like if people know that you can knock them out, they're not going to test you. If people see you have a gun on your hip, they're not going to pop. They're not going to pop slick at you because you they know if they try to put hands on you, you can go pew pew pew. It's the same with a nuke. It's just the nuke is the ultimate deterrent. But it's the same line of reasoning in any sort of defense situation. The guy with the bigger stick keeps the peace. If I have a bigger stick than you, you're not gonna be challenging me and trying to bring harm onto me, are you? So uh, uh, just a random question, guys. How the hell did the rapper Glorilla win the BET Gospel Award? How does the most one of the most ratchet female rappers in the world win a gospel award? This is why honestly a lot of black people don't take BET seriously. But anyway, off of that, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole different discussion. Psycho Muses, love and peace. You're amazing. Thank you. Monica says, "What do you think about Obama's nuclear arms deal and it's being removed?" Well, Trump, back in his first term, had already backed out of the Iran deal that Obama made because he said it wasn't a good deal. And looking at the terms of it now, and I agree. Back then, I didn't agree with him. I'm like, why would you mess that up? But then um, the fact that it left a lot of things open that we couldn't, like people were saying, oh well, they were actually abiding by the deal and they were allowing um, the UN to come in to check to make sure that they weren't that the nuclear materials that they had weren't being used to construct arms, but there were some problems in it that are now only being acknowledged. And so now, and I do agree Trump from backing out of that deal. You see, I mean, Iran has been uh, dealing with us in bad faith for a long time. Like I said, they have been behind the funding of several terrorist groups that have attacked us and our allies, including Israel. So, do you really trust someone who is constantly either attacking you or your buddies to not finding some way to make a weapon to eventually hurt you as well? I don't know. Torres says, but as far as the first nuclear bomb creation, I don't know the full reason why they resorted to specifically that, but it definitely did give us more options to destroy ourselves with. Well, there's a thing in geopolitics called the mutual destruction theory, mutual destruction treaty. Like, you know, we won't attack the Soviet Union for the same reasons the Soviet Union won't attack us. It would lead to our assured mutual destruction. So it works as a deterrent for both of us to come to the table in good faith and work out our problems, because we both know if we if we hit the big red button, it's all over with. Some of you should watch the old '80s movie War Games with Matthew Broderick. They even referenced it in Captain America: Winter Soldier, when Black Widow told Captain America that he said you need to watch War Games. He's like, yeah, it's already on my list. And he says, fun fact on World War II, one of the German SS units were Muslims from Iran. I didn't know that, so I don't know if that's true or not. David says the Skynet is coming. No, again, no Skynet, because we still don't have strong AI. To get to the apocalyptic visions of these futurists and their AI singularity moment, like Skynet. Skynet is a version of the AI singularity that some of these futurists are pointing to. AI singularity, for you folks who don't know, is when strong AI comes to a point where it becomes self-aware, and supposedly once it becomes self-aware, it will realize that it's better off doing away with humans or subjugating them. And again, we're a long ways from that being a genuine possibility, because we still haven't even gotten strong AI yet, for the reasons I've detailed above. I mean, early on in the live stream. Valley says the atom bomb found calculations by Einstein. Well, the atom bomb relies on general relativity. And during World War II, Einstein worked with the Allies to show how general relativity could lead to them making an atomic bomb. This became the Manhattan Project, um, to which I think he later regretted. But in any case, it did in World War II. So, I mean, when it comes to war and politics, there are no perfect solutions. Um, I'm probably gonna get off soon, guys. because this keeps going off tangent. Talk Talk says Mexican babies have the most heartburn from Mexican mothers and spicy milk. For your information, I don't know whether that's true, so I can't verify that. I mean, that sounds like it's a bad joke. I don't know. But I'm about to go soon so I can eat my little White Castle sliders that I have left over from earlier. They don't have no white. They don't have a White Castles in Maryland, but I got the frozen kind out the supermarket. So, um, Bailey says you're getting what you wanted, bro. I am. um, he said, um, but yeah, skipping ahead a little bit. Torlov says those were the only two nukes ever used in combat, but since there have been thousands of nuclear bomb tests, yeah, I was about to say those may have been the only two used in war, but there have been tons of testing in throughout the Pacific arena. Remember, Godzilla. The origins of Godzilla was that he was a result of the atomic bomb, the H bombs being tested in the Pacific uh, Ocean at the time, and was a mutated monster as a result. So Miko Animator, I think that's the how you say your name. If not, you can correct me. Says agreed. Those who come here legally are probably more pissed about the open border situation than the citizens are. Yeah, man. Like I would be. I would be like it's the same like it's like the same in school. Like if you like if you busted your ass to on a midterm or final for that for that B for that B minus and you see someone cheat and get an A plus and the teacher knows they cheated and doesn't care, that's what's going that would be how it feels like you like you know you had to study your ass off for that midterm and you get a B minus, so you get a passing grade, good, but you worked hard for it, and then you see someone cheat. The professor knows that the person cheated, and instead of flunking that person and that person receiving being put on academic suspension, which happens in college if you're caught cheating. If not, you might be either put on academic suspension or expelled, depending on how grievous they consider the issue, right? But instead of you being flunked out of the class and receiving academic suspension or expulsion, they actually reward the cheater with an A plus. You will be pissed off, right? Because not only did the person cheat, they knew they cheated and they were rewarded for it. That was what was happened with immigrants who came here legally versus those who came here illegally. It's like you came here and it took you years to become to earn your legal status here as an American citizen or a permanent or get your permanent residency status. And then you see people come here illegally, and instead of them being immediately deported and blacklisted from returning, instead they are given sanctuary states and sanctuary cities to come to where they are giving financial and housing benefits. So they're being incentivized to do things the wrong way. That would be pretty demoralizing, as an immigrant to see that happening when you came here doing it the right way. And this is why 60% of the Latino community in America voted for Trump, because they hated the illegal immigration situation too. Um, David and Dog says Nixon came about 12 hours away from starting a nuclear war. I don't know about Nixon, but Kennedy did. Kennedy almost set off World War III because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, if that's what you're referring to. I know that with Kennedy. I don't know about what Nixon did, but I know Nick Kennedy got us very close to that 12th hour with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it was America's fault. We were putting up all these little NATO satellite um, installations. I mean, all these little satellite installations um, tipped with nuclear arms in NATO countries pointing at the Soviet Union. So what did they do in retaliation? They put one against us in Cuba. As Cuba fell under the Warsaw Pact, right? Um, and it seems pretty haughty to say that we can put up a bunch of nuclear installations across along the borders of NATO, pointed in the direction of the Soviet Union, and then we get mad when the Soviet Union did the very same thing with Cuba, having their nuke aimed at us, and it came to the point one wrong move could have set off that strike, mutually assured destruction. And luckily, cooler heads prevailed. Premier Khrushchev at the time actually called Kennedy and said, "Look, we don't want to go to war with you guys. We do not want to set off a nuclear war." Kennedy said, "Yeah, we don't either." And Khrushchev said, "All right, let's just back. Let's just let's just chill out and back off." And Kennedy agreed, but then Kennedy said, "Yeah, but can we say that we were the ones who told you to back off?" And Khrushchev took the L on it. He being the bigger man, and I hate to say it, but Premier Khrushchev was the bigger man and said, "All right, Kennedy, you can you can act like you took like we took the L on this, even though we were the ones who called you and said we don't want this to happen." Kennedy almost led us to World War III. So Gally says deleting humanity from the earth. Maybe. NC says so did Kennedy. So did oh yeah. So NC already spoke up about what I just mentioned. Torres says there was another extremely close call with a Russian submarine carrying warheads that got hit by a decoy sea mine and thought war had started. The last officer, which decision would decide the launch. That sounds like the Hunt for Red October. Do anyone remember that movie? It's a really good movie with starring Sean Connery. But yeah, Torres says denied it. They surfaced and saw no war. Look, there are plenty of incidents that have happened, and we are just not privy to them. Um, According to some folks, during Trump's first administration, he brought us very close to, may have brought us very close to World War III. Um, I don't know how accurate that is, so I can't. I'm not going to say that that was true. But yes, incidents happen all the time, which bring us very close to World War III or some level of annihilation. Luckily, cooler heads prevail. Agatha says I'm still here. Thanks, Agatha. I'm a oh shit, it's late. Yeah, I'm about to call this a wrap. Um, Jim says Agatha ban these fools for being completely stupid. Oh, yeah, Jim. She knows the deal. She already know that her and all my moderators, I've given carte blanche to ban people or put them on timeout if they don't know how to behave. Agnes says, please be gentle with your words, okay? Uh, Ally the Snowman and her friends has a lot of paid marching today. That was not paid marching. Those were literally the U.S. Army. They were people from all over the U.S. Army. Do you know the Army is the largest branch of the U.S. military? Those were genuine folks. These were. This is not to walk to pretend to be a um, a service member is actually a crime. It's called stolen valor. Those were not paid marches. Those were genuine service members of the U.S. military. So I don't know where you even got that. It's so people can't separate their dislike of politicians from other things. I wish y'all could think better. You could simply say, I disagree with this parade, or I disagree with the president using this parade to flaunt his his military prowess or something of that nature. But don't disrespect the people of the U.S. Army and the other members of the military by saying that they were paid to march in a parade when they weren't. The people of the Army are very proud of the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army because it is the birthday of the Army which led to our United States of America. The U.S. Army is older than the United States of America because we we organized an army to fight for our independence before we had a nation. And the Army and patriotic Americans are very proud of that. There was no need to get paid for it. So, suck a dick. Anyway, uh, yeah, it's time you face timed out, Allie. Go suck a dick, bitch. Anywho, Sleazy Food says the current claim is currently under debate. Well, no, it's not. You can go debate it with someone else. I mean, this is just facts at this point. Uh, Sleazy says they actually think that humans, as we know them, might be thousands of years older than previously known. Oh, that's what you're talking about. I'm sorry. You're talking about um, our, the origins of modern humanity. It's everything in science is always up for debate. This is why science is self-correcting because it never accepts things um, just on principle or out of out of a an appeal to expertise or an appeal to religious authority. Science doesn't work that way. Everything is all knowledge in science is provincial because there's always there's always the possibility that in the light of evidence our beliefs might be modified or even modified or changed or refuted. Yeah, so that's the strength of science is that it's always self-correcting. But having said that, the current evidence does show that out of the two hypotheses, the out of Africa hypothesis versus its rival, is that it's showing that yes, that people kind of independently evolved in different areas of the world after they left Africa, but that there were different. Uh, there was more genetic diversity that left out of Africa than previously thought. So it's sort of like so it seems where those two hypotheses are actually kind of to blending, or kind of merging into one. So, but yeah, Sleazy Foods says unless African wasn't at the equator, what then? What? You know how large Africa is. Not all of it is at the equator, but again, most countries around the equator between the tropics of Cancer and between the Tropic of Capricorn tend to be darker people. So you're talking about something from 30, 40 minutes ago. Hannibal says Trump is an embarrassment. Okay. And there weren't other presidents that was an embarrassment. We had a president that was literally senile and the media covered up for it. That's an embarrassment. Valentino at Morgan says deport them all. Yeah, sickle cell anemia is a race based illness. The NC brings up, he also says there are genetic mutations that make us different, of course. Alan says mixed races, mixed skeletal characteristics, pointing back to what I was talking about earlier. Yeah, that's why I said that would be harder to ascertain. But again, it just the fact that it makes those uh, some of those characteristics harder to identify shows that there were characteristics to identify in the first place, right? The teeth as well. Yes, we know that there are different types of teeth in different human populations, even amongst, like, say, different Asian and African populations. There are different types of uh, uh, dental features, so that you would know a East Asian group from like Southeast Asians, for instance, from Pacific Islanders. And since genetics are adapting all the time, we don't know it because it happens so slowly. Yep. Ellen says that YouTube has a 30-minute delay for streaming. It's not a again, guys, there's no streaming delay. What it is I'm answering people in real time. So if you if people have flooded the chat room with hundreds of comments, I'm not going to get to those at the very time that someone asks leaves the comment. That just makes sense, right? Where this is being read in real time because this is a live stream. So if you if you ask me something and then 50 other comments came in right after you asked me something, I'm not going to see it until I've gotten through those 50 other comments. It's no delay. It's the process of me answering comments in real time. little bit of this and that, firearms and outdoors. Says bones are different, thus they can tell by looking at bones the ethnicity. Yeah, and if they really want to, they can also take genetic samples from those bones too. I want to put on some music, but I'm not trying to get demonetized. Plus, I'm about to go. J.A.C. Hopte says, "Are you Mexican? Are you stupid?" Uh, LM says, "Wow, that's an accomplishment for Brazil. Way to hold it down." I don't know if it was them holding it down just so much as that they were a current they practice the slave trade longer than other parts of the New World. Like once the transatlantic slave trade was abolished and slavery within America was abolished, it was still happening in Brazil. I think Brazil was the last. I believe Brazil was the last country in the New World to abolish slavery. That's why, which makes sense why they would have more black folks in Brazil. One, because they would have still had probably slaves being transported from Africa. Um, because we know that although the transatlantic slave trade was officially abolished in 1808, there were still slaves being brought to America illegally up until 1860. The last one being the Clotilda, which is very well documented. Um, But Brazil, even after the abolishment of slavery in 1863 in America through the Exclamation Proclamation, and officially ended in 1865 with the ending of the Civil War, Brazil was still practicing slavery until I believe the 1880s or something like that. Um, and so not only would they probably still had slaves being transported there, they would have also been still breeding having slave breeding centers in Brazil, just like in America. A lot of these places down south had had slave breeding centers, and yes, it sounds exactly what it sounds like. They were literally just forcing these people to have sex and have children, and to which once the children were born, they were immediately uh, sold as slaves into bondage for profit. And so, since slavery was still going on in Brazil, where everywhere else in the New World it ended, it makes sense they would have still been churning out a lot of slaves, which means they would have had a larger black population. Matter of fact, there were even Africans who sailed to Brazil, um, who were part of this, who were part of the uh, folks from Africa who were selling slaves to these uh, to these Portuguese Brazilian folks. So they knew exactly what was going on. This is why I said Africa owes Black Americans reparations. Anyway, Ellen says, "Yep, they never told us that back in the early 2000s, 1990s, and 80s. I heard also that Africans were conquistadors with the Spanish in South America. Then it flipped. The earliest person I learned was Crispus Attucks in the Revolution. Yeah. So Crispus Attucks was the black man in New York, I believe in New York, well, from New York, who became the first person to die in the Revolutionary War, in the American Revolutionary War. So he's not he he became not just a black hero, he became an American hero. The black man set it off. The I repeat, the black man set it off. I repeat, the black man set it off. Yeah, I'm on my Dr. Umar shit. The black man set it off for the American independence. He was the first one who had that smoke for the British. He was the first one. So when I say the foundational black Americans are foundational black Americans and are getting deported, I mean exactly that. They're again, I don't care how racist you have some people on the fringes of the right wing are, right? They don't speak for most Americans. When it comes down to it, there's an unwritten and unspoken but tacitly understood social contract in America that black Americans and white Americans are the true Americans. So no matter how many other minority groups come here and and flout their success over black Americans, including other black groups from Africa and the Caribbean, no matter how much they talk about how much more successful they are and blah 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 blah, what they don't understand is they're not really they're still considered the others. And they don't realize that until it's too late. And Trump is reminding them of that now. Yes, you guys are successful. Yes, you guys have contributed to our labor force. But guess what? You're still the others. There you go. So with that being said, wow, there's a ton of comments. I'm gonna read one last one, um, and then I'm gonna go because this will go forever. DJ Hergert, what's up? Said LM, the parade wasn't for Trump; it was the Army's 250th birthday. Trump's birthday just happened to be on the same day. We have also had military parades in the past, and this one was privately funded. Exactly. Not also was it also it was Flag Day as well. Today was a confluence of things. It was Trump's birthday. It was the birthday. It was the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army, and it was U.S. Flag Day. Those all happened today. This is why Trump wanted to celebrate that. Notice during this whole celebration, and I watched the live earlier today before I went to the Asian food festival. Nowhere were they talking about, yeah, Trump's birthday, Trump's birthday. No, they were all celebrating the Army's birthday and Flag Day. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, I'm not going to be able to get to all these comments. So, sorry if I missed anything. It wasn't intentionally, but there was just no way to follow through with all of these. Agatha, I'm out, sweetie. Thank you for holding me down. Cause I don't know where um Moonlit Fern is, but I know he's been recently on some treatment for his foot surgery that's been affecting him. So anyway, hopefully he'll be back once he gets that taken care of. But I'm out, guys. Thank you for the likes. I would have I would have appreciated a super chat or a cash app, not from me, but from my friend Micah, who I'm still trying to support with her transition to become employed and to have something to feed her daughter. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can watch my previous two live streams where she comes on to there. The first one she was only on for like 5 minutes. The other one she was on for the whole live stream. So um, check that out. And if you decide you want to donate, again, there's the Cash App is in the description, or you can send me a super thanks. But thanks everyone again. Happy birthday to the U.S. Army on its 250th birthday in 1775 when we formed the Continental Army to go to war with Great Britain for our independence. And we won with George Washington leading the way. Um, and a year later, we had our nation in 1776 as through our Declaration of Independence, written by my ancestor Thomas Jefferson. Um, so again, if someone wants to call ICE on me, go right ahead. But I'm more American than most of you. um, to the that if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was a troll 2 hours ago. So, all right, guys, I'm out. Take care. Bye.